A $10 million jet engine screams like it's tearing itself apart. Executives freeze. Engineers panic. The CEO's career hangs by a thread as federal inspectors walk through the door. And the only person in the room who knows what's really happening? The janitor they all ignore. What comes next will expose a lie so deep it could destroy everything, or save it. This is a story about buried truth, second chances, and one father's fight to protect what matters most. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Hangar 7 buzzed with that particular frequency that made your teeth ache if you listened too long. Adrien Cole didn't listen. He'd learned years ago to tune out the things that didn't matter, to keep his head down, to make himself small in a world that had already decided he wasn't worth noticing. He pushed the industrial mop across the polished concrete floor, the wheels squeaking in rhythm with his movements. Tuesday morning, 6:47 a.m. The engineers wouldn't arrive for another hour, which meant he had the place to himself, just him and the machines that cost more than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The GE9X engine sat in the center of the hangar like a sleeping giant, its massive turbine blades catching the overhead lights. Adrien had watched them install it 3 days ago, a ballet of precision and paranoia. Millions of dollars of aerospace technology, and they'd trusted him to mop around it. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with wet hands, already knowing what it would say. "Daddy, did you remember my lunch money?" Maya. 8 years old, gap-toothed, and the only thing in his life that made sense anymore. "In your backpack, sweetheart. Purple zipper pocket." "Found it. Love you." He smiled despite himself, tucked the phone away, and went back to work. The mop handle was smooth under his calloused palms, different from the tools he used to hold, the precision instruments that required steady hands and steadier nerves. Those days were gone. That life was gone. And he'd made peace with it mostly. The hangar door opened with a metallic groan. Adrien looked up, surprised. It was barely 7. The cleaning crew didn't overlap with the day shift. That was the whole point. Keep the help invisible, keep the machinery pristine, keep everyone in their designated boxes. But this wasn't an engineer. Evelyn Hart walked like she owned the building, because technically she did. 30 years old and already CEO of Apex Aeronautics, the kind of woman who wore her ambition like armor. Dark suit, darker hair pulled back tight enough to give normal people a headache. She moved with purpose, always had somewhere more important to be. Adrien had seen her before, of course. You couldn't work here and not know who she was. But they'd never spoken. Why would they? He was furniture to people like her. Useful, necessary, completely forgettable. She wasn't alone. Behind her came a parade of nervous energy. 3 executives in matching anxiety, tablets clutched like shields. Adrien recognized the type. Mid-level managers who'd climbed high enough to panic about falling. Completely routine, one of them was saying, a thin man with glasses that kept sliding down his nose. The FAA does these spot inspections all the time. We've passed 12 in a row. 13 is supposed to be unlucky, Marcus. Evelyn's voice was sharp, controlled. I'd prefer not to test that theory today. The engine diagnostics came back clean yesterday, another executive chimed in, a woman with red hair and a tremor in her hands that betrayed her calm tone. Every system check passed. We're golden. Evelyn stopped walking. The others nearly crashed into her. Golden, she repeated, tasting the word like it might be poisonous. Jennifer, we're about to let a federal inspector crawl through our flagship propulsion system while our competitors are circling like sharks. Golden is not the word I want to hear. I want perfect. I want flawless. I want so clean it makes their teeth hurt. Adrien kept mopping, but he'd slowed down. Something was off. You didn't bring the CEO and her inner circle to the hangar at 7 in the morning for a routine inspection. And you definitely didn't bring that kind of tension with you unless something was wrong. The inspector arrives at 9, the third executive said, checking his watch like it might have betrayed him. We have 2 hours to do final checks, review documentation, and... The engine screamed. Not a normal sound. Not the whine of turbines spinning up or the controlled roar of ignition testing. This was wrong on a primal level, a shriek of metal against metal, of something fundamental coming apart. Everyone froze. The sound lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like longer, like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if it would happen again. Silence crashed back down. "What?" Evelyn said slowly. "Was that?" Nobody answered. The executives looked at each other, then at their tablets, then back at each other. Adrien watched their faces cycle through confusion, denial, and the beginning of real fear. Marcus was the first to move, practically running toward the diagnostic station set up next to the engine. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up readout after readout. "That's impossible," he muttered. "What's impossible?" Evelyn was right behind him, leaning over his shoulder. "Talk to me, Marcus." The engine wasn't even active. It's been in standby mode since yesterday. There's no reason for it to make any sound at all, let alone... He pulled up another screen. "This doesn't make sense." Jennifer had her phone out, already dialing. "I'm calling the engineering team, getting everyone in here now." "Wait." Evelyn held up a hand. "What do the diagnostics say?" Marcus scrolled through data that meant nothing to Adrien from where he stood. "According to this, everything is normal. Temperature, pressure, all readings within standard parameters. But we all heard..." The engine screamed again. This time it was longer, louder. A sustained shriek that made Adrien's fillings ache and his skin crawl. He'd heard sounds like that before, years ago, in a different hangar with different people who'd actually listened to him. He knew exactly what it meant. "Shut it down!" Evelyn was yelling over the noise. "Shut everything down!" "It's not on!" Marcus shouted back. "The system says it's not even running!" The shriek cut off abruptly, leaving a ringing silence that somehow felt worse. Adrien set down his mop. He shouldn't. He knew he shouldn't. That part of his life was over, buried under years of silence and survival. Getting involved meant getting noticed, and getting noticed meant questions he couldn't afford to answer. But he'd heard that sound before, and he knew what happened if you ignored it. "It's thermal expansion," he said. 5 heads turned toward him like he'd materialized out of thin air. Evelyn's eyes found him for the first time. Really found him, not just seeing the uniform and the mop bucket, but actually looking at the person underneath. "Excuse me?" Her voice could have frozen helium. Adrien felt his pulse kick up. 32 years old, and his hand still wanted to shake when people looked at him like that. Like he was overstepping, like he'd forgotten his place. "The sound," he said, keeping his voice level. "It's metal expanding under heat stress. Something inside is getting hot when it shouldn't be." Marcus laughed, sharp and dismissive. "The temperature readings are normal. You just heard me say that." "The readings you're getting are normal," Adrien corrected, "but something's not being measured." "And you would know this how?" Jennifer's tone was ice-wrapped in courtesy. "Are you an engineer?" The question hung in the air like a trap. "No," Adrien said. "I'm just the guy who cleans up here." He picked up his mop again, fighting the urge to disappear into the back rooms where he belonged. But Evelyn was still staring at him, and he could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. She was the kind of person who missed nothing, forgot nothing, and that made her dangerous. "What's your name?" she asked. "Adrien Cole." "How long have you worked here, Mr. Cole?" 3 years. "And in those 3 years you've developed expertise in jet engine acoustics?" There it was. The polite way of calling him an idiot. He should have kept his mouth shut. "No, ma'am," he said. "I just know what things sound like when they're about to fail." The third executive, Adrien didn't know his name, snorted. "This is ridiculous. We're standing here taking engineering advice from the janitorial staff?" "Robert," Evelyn said quietly, not taking her eyes off Adrien. "Shut up." Robert's mouth clicked shut. The engine shrieked again, and this time the sound brought a smell with it. Hot metal and burning insulation, faint but unmistakable. "Everyone out," Evelyn ordered. "Clear the hangar, now." "But the inspection," Marcus started, "is going to find a broken engine if we don't figure out what's happening." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the fire department and postponing the FAA visit. Jennifer, get every engineer we have on site immediately. Robert, document everything, every sound, every reading, timestamp it all. And somebody get our insurance liaison on the phone because this is going to get expensive." The executives scattered like startled birds, already talking over each other on their phones. Evelyn looked at Adrien again. "You," she said. "Don't go anywhere." Then she turned and walked toward the engine, close enough to touch it, tilting her head like she was listening for something only she could hear. Adrien wanted to leave. Every instinct told him to grab his mop bucket and disappear before this got worse. But he couldn't make his feet move. The engine sat quiet now, ticking softly as metal cooled. It sounded almost peaceful if you didn't know what to listen for. If you didn't know that peace was sometimes just the pause before everything came apart. By 7:30, the hangar had transformed into controlled chaos. Engineers flooded through the doors in clusters, summoned from breakfast tables and morning showers, and probably a few beds they shouldn't have been in. They gathered around the diagnostic station like priests around an altar, pointing at screens and arguing in acronyms that Adrien had once spoken fluently. He stood in the corner, still holding his mop, watching. Nobody had told him he could leave. Nobody had told him anything. He'd just sort of been absorbed into the background radiation of the crisis, present but invisible. The fire department had sent an inspector, a thick-necked man in turnout gear who kept touching the engine housing and shaking his head. "It's not hot," he reported to Evelyn. "Surface temperature is 68 degrees. Whatever's happening, it's not external." "Internal thermal event," one of the engineers suggested. A young guy couldn't be more than 25 with the kind of confidence that came from never being wrong yet. "Maybe a bearing seized up." "Bearings don't seize on a cold engine," another engineer countered. Older, graying, the kind of tired that came from too many late nights fixing other people's mistakes. "And they definitely don't seize 3 times in 20 minutes on a system that's supposedly in standby mode." "So we agree something impossible is happening," the young engineer said. "I don't believe in impossible," Evelyn cut in. She'd been on her phone for the past 15 minutes, pacing like a caged animal. "I believe in things we haven't figured out yet. Keep looking." Adrien watched them cycle through the same diagnostics Marcus had already run. Same results. Everything normal. Everything wrong. His daughter's school started in 45 minutes. He'd need to leave soon if he wanted to be there for drop-off, and Maya liked it when he walked her to the door. Said it made her feel important, having her dad there when most kids just got shoved out of cars in the circle. But he couldn't shake the feeling that leaving right now would be a mistake. The engine shrieked. Everyone jumped. Adrien noticed that the interval between sounds was getting shorter. 4 minutes this time, maybe less. "There has to be a pattern," the older engineer was saying. "Thermal cycling, pressure changes, something." "Run the spectral analysis," someone else suggested. "Already did. Nothing anomalous." "Check the fuel lines." "Fuel system isn't active." "Then what the hell is—" "Stop." Evelyn's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. Everyone stopped talking for 30 seconds and let me think. Silence fell. 23 people holding their breath, waiting for their CEO to pull a solution out of thin air. Adrien knew she couldn't, because she was looking at the wrong problem. They all were. He set down his mop. "Ma'am," he said, and hated how his voice wanted to crack. "Can I ask a question?" Evelyn turned, and for a second he saw genuine surprise on her face, like she'd forgotten he existed. "Go ahead," she said. "When did you install the engine?" "Friday, 3 days ago. Why?" "And when did you last run a full power diagnostic?" The older engineer answered before Evelyn could. "Saturday morning, 16 hours after installation. Standard protocol. Engine performed perfectly. 98% efficiency across all metrics." Adrien nodded slowly. "What about Sunday?" "We don't run diagnostics on Sunday unless there's a problem. So between Saturday morning and now, the engine's been sitting cold." "In standby mode? Yes." The engineer was looking at him with a mix of confusion and irritation. "What's your point?" "The sound started this morning, right when the temperature changed." "Temperature hasn't changed," Marcus interjected from the diagnostic station. "It's been a steady 68 degrees in here all week. Climate control." "Outside temperature," Adrien said. "It was 59 degrees when I got here at 6. It's 72 now. Houston mornings warm up fast." "So what?" the young engineer scoffed. "You think the engine's allergic to sunshine?" "I think something's reacting to thermal expansion," Adrien said. "Something that only moves when the differential changes. That's why your diagnostics don't show it. You're measuring the wrong thing at the wrong time." "That's—" the young engineer started. "Actually not insane," the older engineer interrupted. He was staring at Adrien with new eyes, the kind that saw past the uniform. "If there's a component that's temperature sensitive and it was installed incorrectly, it could create exactly this kind of intermittent failure. But we'd see it in the installation report," Marcus said. "Would we?" The older engineer turned to Evelyn. "When's the last time you actually read one of those reports cover to cover?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. Pull it up. Now. Marcus typed, pulled up a document, started scrolling. Here. Installation completed by certified team. All components installed to manufacturer specifications. Sign off by... He stopped. By who? Evelyn leaned in. By Scott Hendricks. The name dropped into the conversation like a stone into still water. That's impossible, Jennifer said quietly. Scott left the company 6 months ago. Then why is his digital signature on a report dated 3 days ago? Nobody had an answer for that. The engine shrieked again, longer this time, and something in the sound had changed. It wasn't just metal anymore. There was an undertone of grinding, of parts that shouldn't be touching starting to wear against each other. We're running out of time, the older engineer said. Whatever's happening in there, it's getting worse. Evelyn pulled out her phone, made a call. Security, this is Hart. I need you to pull all access logs for Hangar 7 from Friday to today. I want to know everyone who's been in here, when, and for how long. She listened. I don't care if it takes all day. Start now. She hung up and turned to face her team. Here's what we know, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. We have an engine that's failing in a way that shouldn't be possible. We have a false installation report signed by someone who doesn't work here anymore. And we have a federal inspector arriving in... She checked her watch. 90 minutes, unless I can stall them longer. Cancel the inspection, Robert suggested. Tell them we need to reschedule. And explain what? That our $10 million flagship engine is possessed? That we can't figure out what's wrong with our own equipment? Evelyn shook her head. The FAA doesn't do postponements unless you have a damn good reason. And our janitor thinks it might be a thermal expansion issue isn't going to cut it. Adrien felt heat rise in his face. She wasn't wrong, but the dismissal stung anyway. What if he's right? The older engineer asked. Everyone looked at him. I'm serious, he continued. What if there actually is an installation problem, something we missed? Then we open it up and look, the young engineer said. That's a 4-hour job minimum, Marcus countered. We don't have 4 hours. So we fail the inspection. We fail the inspection, we lose certification, Jennifer said. We lose certification, we lose contracts, we lose contracts, we lose the company. The weight of that settled over the room like a fog. Adrien looked at his watch. 7:51. Maya's school started at 8:30. He was going to be late. He pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. Hey kiddo, I might not make it for drop-off today. Work thing. Love you. The response came back in seconds. It's okay, Daddy. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Just busy. Have a good day. He pocketed the phone and looked up to find Evelyn watching him. Problem? She asked. No, ma'am. You have somewhere to be. It wasn't a question. My daughter, he admitted. But it can wait. Something flickered across Evelyn's face, too quick to read. How old? 8. She nodded once, then turned back to her team. All right, we're going to do this the smart way. Half of you start prepping to open the engine housing. The other half keeps running diagnostics. I want every angle covered, and somebody get me a structural engineer who can tell me if thermal expansion could actually cause this kind of failure pattern. I can tell you that, Adrien said. The words were out before he could stop them. Every eye in the hangar turned to him again, but this time the looks were different, skeptical, curious. And from Evelyn, calculating. You can, she said flatly. Yes, ma'am. Because you're a janitor with a side degree in aerospace engineering. No, ma'am, because I used to design these systems. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus broke it first. You're telling me you're an engineer? Was, Adrien corrected, past tense. Then what the hell are you doing pushing a mop? The young engineer demanded. Making a living. That's not an answer, Evelyn said, and her voice had gone very quiet, dangerous quiet. Who did you work for? Adrien met her eyes, knew he was about to step off a cliff he couldn't climb back up. Here, he said. I worked here 7 years ago, before you bought the company. The bomb dropped. Jennifer pulled out her tablet, fingers flying. Cole. Adrien Cole. She looked up. You're in the system. Former senior engineer, propulsion division. Terminated in 2019. Not terminated, Adrien said. I resigned. The file says terminated. The file's wrong. Lot of that going around today, the older engineer muttered. Evelyn held up a hand for silence. She walked toward Adrien slowly, deliberately, until she was standing close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Explain, she said. Adrien took a breath. 7 years ago, I filed a safety report about a design flaw in the connector harness system for GE9X engines. Specifically, about how non-specification parts could create thermal expansion issues that wouldn't show up in standard diagnostics, but would manifest as intermittent acoustic anomalies, the older engineer finished, his voice hollow. Jesus Christ. I submitted the report to my supervisor, Adrien continued. He buried it, said it would delay production, cost too much to redesign. When I pushed, I got labeled as difficult. When I pushed harder, I got pushed out. Why didn't you take it to the FAA? Marcus asked. Marcus. I tried. Adrien's jaw tightened. I was told that if I went public without evidence, I'd be blacklisted from every aerospace company in the country. And I had a 2-year-old daughter who needed health insurance and food and a roof over her head, so I made a choice. You chose her, Evelyn said softly. Every time. The engine shrieked again, and this time the sound was accompanied by a visible shimmer of heat distortion around the exhaust housing. It's accelerating, the older engineer said, his voice tight. Whatever's happening in there, we're past the point of no return. Open it up, Evelyn ordered. Right now. I don't care what it takes. That's going to void about 17 warranties, Robert warned. Then we void them. Move. The engineering team scattered, pulling tools and lifting equipment from storage. Adrien watched them work, saw them make 3 small mistakes in the first 90 seconds. Nothing dangerous, but inefficient. Old habits died hard. You could help them, Evelyn said beside him. He looked at her. I'm not an engineer anymore. But you could be. That's not how it works. I'm the CEO. I can make it work however I want. She paused. Help them fix this, and we'll talk about what comes next. Adrien thought about Maya, about the text she'd sent, asking if everything was okay, about the parent-teacher conference next week and the field trip permission slip he needed to sign and the 1,000 small things that made up their life together. I can't afford to lose this job, he said. Then don't think of it as losing. Think of it as upgrading. Just like that. Just like that. Adrien looked at the engine, at the team struggling to position the heavy lifting frame correctly. They had it 3 degrees off angle. In about 2 minutes, someone was going to strip a bolt because of it. He walked over. Stop, he said. The young engineer looked up, annoyed. We've got this. You've got it wrong. The frame's not aligned with the load-bearing points. You're going to crack the housing mount if you keep going. It's fine. It's 3 degrees off horizontal. Look at the stress indicator on the left corner. The young engineer looked. His face went pale. Shit. Shift it counterclockwise, but keep the vertical axis locked. The housing needs to come straight up, not at an angle. They adjusted. The frame clicked into place perfectly. The older engineer walked over, extended his hand. David Chen. I've been here 15 years, and I don't think we've ever met. Adrien shook it. Different departments. Different worlds, apparently. David looked at the engine. You really think this is the connector harness? Only one way to find out. They worked for the next 30 minutes in something approaching harmony. Engineers and a janitor who wasn't really a janitor, all of them trying to stop a disaster that hadn't quite happened yet. The housing came off at 8:43. The interior of the engine was a maze of precision components, each one machined to tolerances measured in microns. Beautiful, in its way. Like watching the inside of a watch, if watches could fly at 600 miles an hour and cost $10 million. David pointed with a flashlight. There, see that? Adrien saw it. The connector harness, a cluster of high-temperature cables designed to route electrical signals through the engine core, was the wrong color. Subtle, almost imperceptible unless you knew what to look for. But the coating was definitely not the specification material. That's not copper alloy sheathing, Adrien said quietly. That's aluminum. Jesus, David breathed. Aluminum expands almost twice as fast as copper under thermal stress, which means every time the ambient temperature changes, the cables shift, they rub against the housing, create friction, heat, noise. And eventually, Catastrophic failure. They both turned to look at Evelyn, who'd been standing behind them in silence. Her face was unreadable. "So this was installed incorrectly," she said. "More than that," Adrien replied. "This was installed deliberately. Copper alloy harnesses cost about $3,000. Aluminum ones cost $300. Someone saved $2,700 and signed off using a dead man's credentials." "Not a dead man," Marcus called from the diagnostic station. "Security just sent over the access logs. Scott Hendricks was in this hangar Friday night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., and his badge was used again Sunday at 3 a.m. "Scott doesn't work here anymore," Jennifer said. "Then someone's using his badge," Evelyn said. "Pull the surveillance footage. I want to see who was in here." Robert was already on it. "Footage is corrupted, both nights. Files show errors when you try to open them." "Convenient," David muttered. Evelyn pulled out her phone, made another call. "This is Hart. I need you to lock down all exits from the building. Nobody leaves until I say so. And find Scott Hendricks. I don't care if you have to call his mother. I want him found." She hung up. "How long to replace the harness?" 3 hours if we rush it," David said. "Maybe 2 if we're lucky. The inspector gets here in 47 minutes. Then we're not going to make it." Evelyn looked at the engine, at the wrong-colored cables, at the evidence of someone's greed and someone else's negligence. "Yes, we are," she said. "Adrien, you're going to walk me through exactly what happened 7 years ago. Every detail, every conversation, every piece of documentation you can remember. Jennifer, get legal on the phone. Marcus, I need you to pull every installation report filed in the past year. I want to know if this is a pattern or a one-off. David, you're in charge of the fix. Do whatever it takes." "What about the inspection?" Robert asked. Evelyn smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "I'm going to tell the FAA inspector the truth," she said, "that we discovered a critical safety issue and we're fixing it, that we believe there's been deliberate tampering with our equipment, and that we're cooperating fully with what's about to become a federal investigation." "That's going to tank our stock price," Robert said weakly. "Better than tanking one of our planes." She turned to Adrien. "You good with this?" Adrien thought about Maya again, about the choice he'd made 7 years ago and the one he was about to make now. "Yeah," he said. "I'm good." The engine shrieked one more time, a final protest before they disconnected it completely. And in the sudden silence that followed, Adrien could hear something he hadn't heard in years. The sound of things finally being made right. The FAA inspector arrived at 9:31, 19 minutes after the engine housing had been completely removed and spread across half the hangar floor like the world's most expensive puzzle. Adrien watched from near the diagnostic station as Evelyn walked out to meet him. The inspector was a compact man in his 50s with the kind of face that had seen every excuse in the book and believed exactly none of them. His badge read Thomas Reeves, and he carried a briefcase that probably weighed more than he did. "Ms. Hart," he said, not offering his hand. "I was told there might be a delay." "No delay," Evelyn replied, her voice steady. "Just a complication. Come with me." She led him straight to the exposed engine. No preamble, no attempt to soften it. Adrien had to admire that. Most people would have tried to spin it, to make it sound less catastrophic than it was. Reeves stopped at the edge of the work area, his eyes scanning the disassembled components. His expression didn't change, but Adrien saw his jaw tighten. "How long has it been like this?" Reeves asked. "We opened it 47 minutes ago." "Why?" "Because it was screaming." Evelyn gestured to David, who'd been documenting every step of the process with a camera. "Show him." David pulled up the footage on his tablet, the audio recordings of the engine's shrieks, time-stamped and crystal clear. Reeves listened to all of it without interrupting. "And your diagnostics showed what?" he asked when it finished. "Nothing," Marcus admitted from behind his screen. "Every system read normal, temperature, pressure, all within parameters. Until we found this." Evelyn nodded to Adrien. Adrien stepped forward, feeling the weight of Reeves' tension settle on him like a physical thing. He pointed to the exposed connector harness, still installed in the engine core. "The sheathing material is wrong," he explained. "It's aluminum instead of copper alloy. Aluminum has a higher thermal expansion coefficient. As the ambient temperature increased this morning, the cables expanded, created friction against the housing, generated heat and noise." Reeves leaned in, pulled out a small flashlight, examined the cables himself. "Who certified this installation?" That's where it gets interesting, Evelyn said. She pulled out her phone, showed him the installation report. Digital signature belongs to Scott Hendricks, former employee, except he hasn't worked here in 6 months. And the actual installer? Unknown. We're reviewing security footage, but files from the relevant dates are corrupted. Reeves straightened up, and for the first time Adrien saw something like concern cross his face. You're telling me someone deliberately installed substandard components and falsified the documentation? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Do you have any idea how serious this is? I've got a pretty good idea, yeah. Reeves pulled out his phone. I need to make some calls. Nobody touches that engine until I get federal investigators down here. He looked at Evelyn. And I mean nobody. This is now a criminal scene. Understood. He walked away, already talking into his phone in the clipped tones of someone reporting a disaster. Jennifer appeared at Evelyn's elbow. Legal wants to know if we should prepare a statement. Tell them yes, and tell them to make it honest. We discovered the problem, we reported it, we're cooperating fully. Evelyn rubbed her eyes, and for the first time Adrien saw cracks in her armor. She looked tired. What's the damage assessment looking like? Bad, Jennifer admitted. We're going to lose the certification until this is resolved. That's at least 3 major contracts on hold, maybe more. Stock's going to drop when this hits the news. How much? 20% if we're lucky. 40 if we're not. Evelyn nodded like she'd expected it. And how many jobs does that translate to? Jennifer hesitated. Depends on how long the investigation takes. Could be a dozen, could be 100. Adrien felt his stomach drop. He'd just helped expose a problem that might cost him the only job he could get. We'll figure it out, Evelyn said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. One crisis at a time. David walked over, still holding his camera. We need to talk about the harness. If this one's wrong, we need to check every engine we've installed in the past year. Maybe longer. How many is that? 17. 12 domestic, 5 international. Jesus. Evelyn looked at the ceiling like it might have answers. Start making a list. Locations, clients, installation dates. We're going to have to ground every single one until we can verify they're safe. That's going to cost millions, Robert said from somewhere behind them. You know what costs more? Evelyn turned on him. A plane falling out of the sky because we were too cheap to do this right. So yeah, Robert, it's going to cost millions, and we're going to pay it. Any other observations you'd like to share? Robert went quiet. Adrien's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, saw a message from Maya's school. Maya says you were supposed to be here this morning, just checking if everything's okay. He typed back quickly. Work emergency. Everything's fine. I'll pick her up this afternoon. No problem. She's doing great in class. He pocketed the phone and found Evelyn watching him again. Your daughter, she said. Yeah. You didn't make drop-off? No, ma'am. She looked like she wanted to say something, but Reeves was walking back over, his face grim. Federal investigators are en route, he announced. FBI and NTSB. They'll be here in 3 hours. In the meantime, I need statements from everyone involved in the discovery, starting with you. He pointed at Evelyn. And then him. He pointed at Adrien. Happy to cooperate, Evelyn said. Reeves set up shop in the hangar's conference room, a glass-walled box that overlooked the main floor. Adrien watched through the windows as Evelyn sat down across from him, her posture rigid, her hands folded on the table. The interview lasted 40 minutes. When she came out, her face was carefully blank. You're up, she told Adrien. He walked into the conference room feeling like he was walking into an execution. Reeves gestured to the chair Evelyn had vacated. It was still warm. Adrien Cole, Reeves said, reading from his notes. Former senior engineer, currently employed as janitorial staff. That's an unusual career trajectory. Life's full of surprises. I'm sure. Reeves clicked his pen. Walk me through how you identified the problem. Adrien did, keeping it factual, avoiding the parts that made him sound bitter. The sound, the thermal expansion theory, the realization about the wrong materials. Reeves took notes in careful longhand, occasionally asking for clarification. And 7 years ago, Reeves said, you filed a safety report about this exact issue. Yes, sir. But it was never acted on. No, sir. Who was your supervisor at the time? Adrien hesitated. Names had power. Saying this one out loud would start a chain reaction he couldn't stop. Richard Voss, he said finally. Reeves wrote it down. Is he still with the company? I don't know. I haven't worked here in 7 years. But you came back as a janitor. I needed a job. This was hiring. And it didn't bother you, being back in the place that pushed you out? Adrien met his eyes. It bothered me every single day. But my daughter needed to eat, so I dealt with it. Something shifted in Reeves' expression. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding maybe. How old is she? 8. That's a good age. He closed his notebook. I've got a granddaughter that age. Thinks she's going to be an astronaut. Maybe she will be. Maybe. Reeves stood up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Cole. And for what it's worth. You did the right thing this morning. Just did what needed doing. That's usually when it matters most. Adrien left the conference room and nearly walked straight into Marcus, who'd been hovering outside. They want me next, Marcus said, his face pale. What did he ask you? The truth. I'd stick with that if I were you. Easy for you to say. You don't have anything to lose. Adrien almost laughed. Yeah, nothing at all. He walked away before Marcus could respond, heading back to where the engine sat gutted and exposed. David was there with 2 other engineers, photographing every component from multiple angles. FBI is going to want a complete documentation trail, David explained when he saw Adrien watching. Every part, every connection, every tool mark. This thing's evidence now. You think they'll figure out who did it? Depends on how sloppy they were. If they were smart, they covered their tracks. If they were greedy, he shrugged. Greedy people make mistakes. Scott Hendricks, Adrien said. You know him? Knew him. Worked here maybe 8 years. Pretty good engineer, actually. Never seemed like the type to pull something like this. What's the type look like? David considered that. Desperate, usually. Or entitled. Sometimes both. He adjusted his camera angle. Why'd you really come back here, Adrien? You could have gotten janitorial work anywhere. Needed the health insurance. Company plan here covers pre-existing conditions. No waiting period. Your daughter sick? She was. Heart thing when she was little. She's fine now, but the bills... He stopped. We manage. David nodded slowly. That's the kind of thing that makes you swallow a lot of pride. Every day. They worked in silence for a while, David photographing and Adrien handing him tools when needed. It felt almost normal, like the years hadn't happened, and he was still an engineer doing engineer things. Evelyn appeared around noon with coffee and sandwiches from somewhere off-site. She distributed them without ceremony, just set everything down on a folding table and told people to eat. Adrien took a sandwich he didn't want and a coffee he definitely needed. How'd your interview go? Evelyn asked, appearing beside him. Fine. Yours? About what you'd expect. He asked if I knew about your safety report from 7 years ago. Adrien's hand tightened on his coffee cup. And I told him the truth, that I didn't. I bought this company 18 months ago. Everything before that is history I inherited, not history I made. She took a sip of her own coffee. But I'm going to find out who knew, and when I do, they're going to wish they hadn't. That might include some people still working here. Then they should have made better choices. It's not always that simple. No, she agreed. But it's also not that complicated. Someone knew there was a safety issue and chose profit over people. That's not complexity. That's just cowardice. Adrien thought about his old supervisor, Richard Voss. Thought about the conversation they'd had in an office not unlike this one, where Voss had explained very carefully why the safety report was going to disappear and why Adrien's career would disappear with it if he pushed. You ever have to choose between doing the right thing and keeping your job? He asked. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Yes, she said finally. Before this. Different company, different crisis. I chose the job. It's one of the things I'm not proud of. What happened? Nothing. That's the problem. I kept quiet, kept my position, and nothing changed. Took me 2 years to realize that silence costs more than speaking up. She set down her coffee. That's why I'm not staying quiet now. Whatever this costs, we're going to pay it. Even if it destroys the company? Especially then. Because if we can't do this right, we don't deserve to survive. Robert appeared in the doorway, his phone pressed to his ear. Evelyn, we've got a problem. Another one? Stock dropped 32% in the last hour. Trading's been halted. And CNN just called asking for comment on reports of a major safety violation at Apex Aeronautics. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. How'd they find out so fast? Someone leaked it. Could be anyone at this point. We've got 20 people in this building who know what's happening. Or someone who wanted it public, David said quietly. Someone with a reason to hurt the company. They all looked at each other, the same realization dawning simultaneously. The person who installed the bad harness, Jennifer said. They'd know we'd eventually find it. This might have been the plan all along. Sabotage, Marcus breathed. Corporate sabotage. Evelyn pulled out her phone. I'm calling our security chief. We need to lock this down before Ms. Hart. One of the younger engineers was running toward them from the main entrance. There's a man at the front gate saying he's Scott Hendricks. Security's holding him, but he's demanding to talk to you. Everyone froze. Bring him in, Evelyn said. Conference room. And get Reeves. He's going to want to hear this. 10 minutes later, Scott Hendricks sat in the conference room looking like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. He was thin, jumpy, his eyes darting around like he expected someone to attack him at any moment. Evelyn sat across from him. Reeves stood in the corner with his arms folded. Adrien watched from outside through the glass wall, along with half the engineering team. I didn't do it, Scott said before anyone could speak. Whatever they told you, I didn't install that harness. Your digital signature is on the installation report, Evelyn said calmly. Because someone stole my credentials. I reported it to HR when I left, told them to deactivate my access. They said they would. Who's they? Richard Voss. He was handling my exit paperwork. Adrien felt ice slide down his spine. Evelyn leaned forward. Richard Voss, former VP of Engineering? That's him? He's still with the company, isn't he? He is. Senior advisor position, consulting contract. She looked at Reeves. You getting this? Reeves nodded, his face hard. Why would Voss want to sabotage his own company? Jennifer asked from the doorway. Not his company anymore, Scott said. When you bought Apex, you cleaned house. Voss lost most of his power, got shuffled into a nothing position. Word was, he blamed you for it. So this is revenge, Evelyn said slowly. Or profit. You tank the stock price, buy low, wait for the recovery. Classic short sell scheme. Scott rubbed his face. I don't know his endgame. I just know he's been calling me for months, asking about company operations, access codes, installation schedules. I didn't think anything of it until I saw the news this morning. Why didn't you report it? Reeves demanded. Report what? That my old boss was asking questions? I didn't know he was planning anything. Scott looked at Evelyn. But when I heard about the engine failure, I knew. I just knew. And I couldn't sit at home pretending I didn't. Evelyn stood up. Where's Voss now? No idea. He works remote most of the time. She pulled out her phone, called security. I need you to locate Richard Voss immediately. Check his office, call his cell, do whatever you need to do. If you find him, detain him. If you don't... She looked at Reeves. We're going to need law enforcement involved in this. Already on it, Reeves said, his own phone out. Adrien stepped away from the window, his mind racing. Richard Voss, the man who'd destroyed his career 7 years ago, was now destroying the company itself. There was a poetry to it that made him feel sick. David appeared beside him. You knew him, Voss. Yeah. What was he like? Smart. Ambitious. The kind of guy who always had an angle. Adrien watched through the glass as Evelyn continued questioning Scott. He used to say that engineering was just applied economics. If the numbers worked, the ethics didn't matter. Sounds like a real prize. He got results, though. That's why they kept him around. Until they didn't. Yeah. Until they didn't. Jennifer's phone rang. She answered, listened, went pale. They found his office, she said to Evelyn. It's been cleaned out. Computer, files, personal effects, all gone. Looks like he hasn't been there in weeks. Check his apartment, Evelyn ordered. Already did. Landlord says he moved out last month, left no forwarding address. Reeves swore under his breath. He's running. Probably has been planning this for a while. What about financial records? Evelyn asked. Bank accounts? Credit cards? FBI can get those, but it takes time, Reeves said. And if he's smart, he's already moved his money somewhere we can't track it. He's smart, Adrien said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He's very smart. and patient. If he's been planning this for months, he's thought through every angle. You sound like you know him pretty well, Reeves observed, well enough to know that he doesn't leave loose ends. Meaning, Adrien looked at the exposed engine, at the wrong-colored cables that had started all of this. Meaning that harness isn't the only thing he sabotaged. There's no way he goes through all this effort for one engine. He'd want maximum damage. The silence that followed was absolute. David moved first, pulling out his tablet. The other installations. The 17 engines we've delivered in the past year. His fingers flew across the screen. If even half of them have the same problem, then we've got planes in the air right now that could fail, Evelyn finished. Her face had gone white. Get me a list. Every client, every location, every aircraft currently in service. That's going to take time, Marcus said. Then start now. And while you're at it, pull every installation report for the last 18 months. If Voss's signature is on any of them, I want to know. The team scattered, moving with the kind of urgent focus that came from understanding exactly how bad things could get. Reeves was already on his phone again. I need to issue a safety advisory. Ground every aircraft with Apex engines until they can be inspected. He looked at Evelyn. This is going to be national news, probably international. I know. Your company might not survive it. I know that too. He studied her for a moment, then nodded with something like respect. You're handling this better than most would. Ask me again tomorrow. Adrien's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, expecting another message from Maya's school, but it was an unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then something made him open it. You should have stayed quiet. Now everyone pays. No signature, no context. But Adrien knew who it was from. He showed it to Evelyn. She read it, her jaw tightening, then handed the phone to Reeves. That's a threat, Reeves said, and probably admissible. We can trace this. He's using a burner, Adrien said. He's too smart to use his real number. How do you know? Because that's what he told me to do 7 years ago, when I filed the safety report. He said if I wanted to blow the whistle, I should at least be smart enough to cover my tracks. Adrien took his phone back. He taught me how to hide. I just didn't listen. Evelyn was staring at him. He threatened you back then, too. Not directly. He just made it very clear what would happen if I didn't back down. Adrien pocketed his phone. I had a 2-year-old and no savings, so I backed down. And now? Now my daughter's 8, and I've got nothing left to lose. That's not true, Evelyn said quietly. You've got a lot to lose. Your job, your reputation, possibly your safety if Voss is desperate enough. Maybe, but some things are worth the risk. Like what? Adrien thought about Maya, about the way she'd looked at him that morning when he'd told her he might not make drop-off. Disappointed but understanding, because she'd learned young that sometimes her dad couldn't be there. That work came first. That survival required sacrifice. Like making sure she grows up in a world where people actually fix their mistakes, he said. Evelyn held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. All right then, let's fix this. Over the next 2 hours, the scope of the disaster became clear. Of the 17 engines Apex had delivered in the past year, 9 had installation reports signed by Richard Voss using Scott Hendrick's stolen credentials. 9 engines, 9 aircraft, 9 potential catastrophes waiting to happen. The FBI arrived at 2:15 with enough agents to intimidate a small army. They took over the conference room, set up computers and phones, and started interviewing everyone who'd been in the building that morning. Adrien gave his statement to a woman who introduced herself as Special Agent Marsh. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. So you filed a safety report in 2019, she said, reviewing her notes. Warning about this exact problem. Yes, ma'am. And Richard Voss suppressed it. Yes, ma'am. Why didn't you take it higher? Go over his head. I tried. Voss's boss at the time was James Porter. I went to him, explained the situation. Porter said he'd look into it. Adrien remembered that conversation, the way Porter had nodded sympathetically while doing absolutely nothing. 2 weeks later, I was called into HR and told my position was being eliminated due to restructuring. They offered me a severance package if I signed a non-disclosure agreement. Did you sign it? No, I just left and came back 3 years later as a janitor. Like I said, I needed the health insurance. Marsh made a note. Voss contacted you after you left, didn't he? Adrien blinked. How did you? Phone records. We pulled them this afternoon. He called you 16 times in the month after your resignation. I never answered. But he left messages. Yeah, offering me money to stay quiet, then threatening me when I wouldn't take it, then just... He stopped. Eventually, he stopped calling, because he thought you were neutralized, that you'd given up. Marsh leaned forward. But you didn't, did you? You kept copies of everything. Adrien felt his pulse quicken. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. The safety report, the documentation, the evidence. You kept it all, just in case. She smiled slightly. It's what I would have done. He said nothing. Mr. Cole, Marsh said gently, if you have any documentation that could help this investigation, now would be the time to share it. Adrien thought about the storage unit across town, the one he'd been paying for 7 years, the one that held a banker's box full of papers he'd told himself he'd never need again. I might have something, he admitted. Then I suggest you go get it. He left the building at 3:45, driving through Houston traffic that seemed to know he was in a hurry and deliberately slow down out of spite. The storage facility was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation office, the kind of place that existed purely for people who needed to hide things from their present lives. Unit 247. He'd memorized the code years ago, Maya's birthday plus the year he'd met her mother. The door rolled up with a screech that echoed in the empty corridor. Inside was almost nothing, a box of Maya's baby clothes he couldn't bring himself to donate, some old textbooks, and in the corner, wrapped in a trash bag like it might be contagious, the banker's box. He pulled it out, felt the weight of it. 7 years of evidence, 7 years of silence, 7 years of wondering if he'd made the right choice. Now he'd find out. He was driving back when his phone rang. Evelyn. Where are you? She asked without preamble. Getting something for the FBI. Be there in 20 minutes. Make it 10. We've got a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where one of our engines just failed on a commercial flight over Arizona. Adrien's hands tightened on the wheel. Casualties. Plane made an emergency landing, no injuries, but it's all over the news, which means Voss is watching. He'll know we're on to him. Exactly. So whatever you're bringing back, I hope it's good. It's everything. He hung up and pressed the accelerator harder. When he got back to Apex, the parking lot was full of news vans. Reporters swarmed the entrance, shouting questions at anyone who walked by. Adrien slipped in through a side door, the banker's box heavy in his arms. Marsh met him in the hallway. That it? Everything I kept. Reports, emails, photographs, recordings from meetings where Voss talked about cost-cutting measures that violated safety protocols. She took the box, looked inside, and her eyebrows rose. This is enough to bury him, if you can find him. Oh, we'll find him. She smiled, and it was not a nice expression. People like Voss always think they're smarter than everyone else. That's usually when they make their biggest mistake. Adrien followed her back to the conference room where Evelyn and Reeves were watching a news broadcast on someone's laptop. The headline read, Major Aerospace Company Faces Crisis as Engine Failures Mount. They're calling it the biggest aviation safety scandal in a decade, Evelyn said without looking away from the screen. And they're probably right. You okay? Adrien asked. She finally turned to face him, and he saw that she'd been crying. Not much, just enough to leave faint tracks in her makeup that she hadn't bothered to fix. I bought this company because I believed in it, she said. Because I thought aerospace was about pushing boundaries, about making impossible things happen. And instead I find out it's just... She gestured helplessly. This. It doesn't have to be. Doesn't it? How many companies survive something like this? The ones that actually fix it. And if we can't? Adrien set down the box. Then at least we tried. That's more than most people can say. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You're an optimist. After everything that happened to you, you're still an optimist. Not really. I just know that giving up doesn't make things better. No, she agreed. It just makes them quieter. Marsh opened the box and started pulling out files, her expression growing more intent with each page. After a few minutes, she looked up. This is prosecutable, she said. Multiple counts of fraud, reckless endangerment, possibly manslaughter if we can tie him to any incidents. Where did you hide all this? Storage unit. Figured someday it might matter. It matters. She pulled out her phone. I need to conference in the U.S. Attorney's Office. This just became a federal case. As she walked away making calls, Adrien felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but something close to it. Like a weight he'd been carrying for 7 years had finally been set down. Evelyn was watching him. You could have used this years ago. Could have gone to the media, forced an investigation, and lost custody of my daughter when Voss made good on his threats. He had lawyers, money, connections. I had a baby and a studio apartment. Adrien shook his head. I chose her. I'd do it again. Even knowing what happened, what he did? Especially knowing, because she's alive and safe and happy, and that's worth every compromise I had to make. That's love, Evelyn said quietly. No, that's just being a parent. Outside the conference room, the building was emptying out. It was after 5 now, and people were being sent home while the FBI worked. Adrien checked his phone and realized with a jolt that Maya's school had ended 2 hours ago. He called the aftercare program, got the director. Hey, this is Adrien Cole. I know I'm late picking up Maya. Oh, she's fine. She's been helping Mrs. Patterson organize the art supplies. Want to talk to her? Please. A moment later, Maya's voice came on the line, bright and unconcerned. Hi, Daddy. Hey, sweetheart, I'm so sorry I'm late. It's okay. Are you still having a work thing? Yeah, a big one. Is it a bad work thing or a good work thing? He thought about that. I'm not sure yet. Maybe both. That doesn't make sense. I know. I'll explain when I pick you up. Give me 30 minutes, okay? Okay, love you. Love you too, baby. He hung up and found Evelyn still watching him. Go, she said. Get your daughter. We've got this covered. You sure? Adrien, you've been carrying this company on your back all day. I think we can manage the next 30 minutes without you. She paused. But I want you back here tomorrow, 7 a.m. We've got work to do. What kind of work? The kind that involves figuring out how to rebuild this place into something worth saving. She extended her hand. I'm offering you your job back, the real one. Senior engineer, propulsion division. Same position you had before, adjusted for inflation. Adrien stared at her hand like it might burn him. You can't. I can. I'm the CEO. And I need people who actually give a damn about doing this right. The board will never approve it. The board just watched our stock price crater 32% because someone cut corners. I think they'll approve anything that might fix that. She kept her hand extended. So what do you say? He thought about Maya, about the field trip permission slip he needed to sign and the parent-teacher conference next week, about the life they'd built in the margins, making do with less because it was all they had. And then he thought about the engine in the hangar, about the wrong-colored cables and the people who'd chosen profit over safety, about 7 years of silence and all the things that silence had cost. I work late Tuesdays and Thursdays, he said, and I'm off every Wednesday, non-negotiable. Done. And if Maya gets sick, I leave. No questions, no guilt. Agreed. And I want it in writing, contract, not handshake, because I've been burned before. Evelyn smiled, and it was the first genuine smile he'd seen from her all day. Smart man. Jennifer will draw it up tonight. You'll have it tomorrow morning. He shook her hand. As he left the building, heading to pick up his daughter from aftercare, Adrien noticed the news vans were still there. Cameras still rolling, the whole world watching Apex Aeronautics implode in slow motion. But for the first time in 7 years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, something good might come from the wreckage. Maya was waiting by the aftercare door with her backpack at her feet and a drawing in her hands. She held it up the moment she saw Adrien's car pull into the lot. I made you a rocket ship, she announced, climbing into the back seat. Mrs. Patterson said it's really good for my age. Adrien looked at the drawing in the rear-view mirror, a crayon spaceship with flames coming out the bottom and what looked like a cat in the window. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Is the cat the pilot? Obviously. Her name is Commander Whiskers, and she's going to Mars to find aliens. Maya buckled herself in with practiced efficiency. Why do you look sad? I'm not sad. Yes, you are. You get this line right here. She pointed to the space between her eyebrows. When something's wrong. Adrien pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward their apartment across town. Just a long day at work. The bad good work thing? Yeah, that. Are you in trouble? No, baby, I'm not in trouble. Then why were you late? He thought about how to explain it. The engine, the investigation, the job offer that might change everything, or might disappear tomorrow if the FBI decided he was somehow complicit. How did you tell an 8-year-old that the world was more complicated than rocket ships and cats? Sometimes grown-up problems take longer to fix than we think they will, he said finally. Maya considered this. Like when you tried to fix the dishwasher and it took 3 days and we had to eat on paper plates? Exactly like that. Okay? She went back to coloring in her backpack, apparently satisfied. Can we get pizza for dinner? Sure. And can I stay up past bedtime because you were late? Nice try. Regular bedtime. Worth asking, she said cheerfully. They stopped at the pizza place near their apartment, a hole-in-the-wall joint that made mediocre food at decent prices. Maya got her usual pepperoni. Adrien got a slice he didn't taste and coffee that was mostly burnt. His phone rang while they were eating. Evelyn. I need to take this, he told Maya. Is it the work thing? Yeah. Tell them you're eating pizza with your daughter and they should call back later. I wish I could, sweetheart. He stepped outside into the parking lot. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Evelyn said, but her voice was tight. We found Voss, or rather, airport security found him. He tried to board a flight to the Cayman Islands using a fake passport. Adrien felt something cold settle in his stomach. Is he in custody? FBI picked him up 20 minutes ago. They're bringing him back here for questioning. She paused. I thought you'd want to know. Since this all started with what he did to you. What happens now? Now they build a case. Your documentation helps, but they need more. Witness testimony, financial records, proof of intent. It's going to take weeks, maybe months. And the company? Still hemorrhaging money. Stocks down another 15%. 3 major clients canceled contracts this afternoon. 2 more are threatening to unless we can prove every engine we've ever delivered is safe. Her voice cracked slightly. We're looking at bankruptcy if this doesn't turn around soon. Through the window, Adrien could see Maya spinning on the restaurant stool, making herself dizzy. She looked happy, uncomplicated, like nothing in the world could touch her. I'll be there tomorrow, he said. 7 a.m., like you asked. Adrien, you don't have to. Yes, I do. We started this. We're going to finish it. Even if it costs you everything? He watched Maya fall off the stool, laughing, pick herself up, try again. Some things are worth the cost. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Your daughter's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. There's a difference. He hung up and went back inside. Maya had convinced the teenager behind the counter to let her refill her own soda and was carefully operating the machine with the concentration of a surgeon. Did you tell them you were busy? She asked without looking up. I told them I'd see them tomorrow. Good. Because Commander Whiskers needs you to help color the Mars landscape, and I can't do it by myself. Okay then, let's go home and color Mars. They spent the evening on the living room floor with her crayons spread out like a paint explosion. Maya decided Mars should be purple instead of red because purple was prettier. Adrien didn't argue. He just helped her fill in the sky while she narrated Commander Whiskers' adventures. At 8:30, he wrestled her into pajamas and read 3 chapters of the book they were working through. Some fantasy thing about wizards and talking animals that Maya loved and Adrien could barely follow. She fell asleep halfway through chapter 3, her head on his shoulder, breathing steady and deep. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in the doorway for a long moment just watching her sleep. This was the part of his life that made sense. Everything else was chaos and compromise and choices that never felt quite right. But this, his daughter, safe and loved and dreaming about purple planets, this was pure. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. You made a mistake coming back, but I suppose you'll figure that out soon enough. Adrien deleted it without responding. Voss was in custody, powerless to do anything except send bitter messages from whatever holding cell they'd put him in. The threats were empty now, or at least that's what he told himself. He slept badly, waking every few hours to check his phone, like it might have answers for questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. At 5:47 a.m., he gave up and got out of bed. Maya woke up at 6:15, groggy and annoyed that it was a school day. Do I have to go? She mumbled into her cereal. Yes. But what if I'm sick? You're not sick. I could be sick. My stomach feels weird. Your stomach always feels weird when you don't want to do something. She glared at him with the full force of 8-year-old indignation. You're mean. I'm practical. Finish your cereal. He dropped her at school at 7:52, which meant he'd be late getting to Apex. But Maya had insisted on showing him the art wall where they'd hung her rocket ship drawing. It was surrounded by other kids' artwork, rainbows and houses and stick figure families. Hers stood out because of the purple Mars landscape and the clearly visible cat in the pilot seat. I'm proud of you, he told her. I know, she said, completely unselfconscious. Bye, Daddy. Have a good work thing. Thanks, sweetheart. He made it to Apex at 8:17. The parking lot was different from yesterday. Fewer news vans, more black SUVs with government plates. The FBI had set up a command center in what used to be the executive conference room, and agents moved through the building with the purposeful efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were looking for. Marsh found him in the hallway outside the hangar. You're late, she observed. School drop-off. Right. The daughter. She gestured for him to follow her. We need to talk about Voss. They walked to a smaller conference room that hadn't been taken over by federal agents yet. Inside was Evelyn, looking like she'd slept in her clothes, and a man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen everything twice. Adrien Cole, Marsh said. This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Kenneth Walsh. He's prosecuting the case against Richard Voss. Walsh stood, shook Adrien's hand with a grip that was firm without being aggressive. Mr. Cole, I've been reading your documentation. It's thorough. I kept copies of everything. So I see. Emails, meeting notes, photographs of the original safety reports. Walsh sat back down, gestured for Adrien to do the same. The question is whether it's enough to prove criminal intent. Voss's lawyers are already arguing that he was simply following company policy at the time, that the decision to suppress your report was made by committee, not by him alone. That's bullshit, Adrien said. He made the call personally. I was in the room when he did it. Can you prove that? I have recordings. The room went silent. Evelyn leaned forward. You recorded the meetings? Not all of them, just the ones where I knew he was going to threaten me. Adrien pulled out his phone, navigated to a folder he'd backed up 7 years ago and never opened since. Texas is a one-party consent state. I didn't need his permission. Walsh's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. How many recordings? 4 meetings? 3 phone calls. The last one was the day before I resigned, when he told me that if I went to the FAA, he'd make sure I never worked in aerospace again, and that he'd make my custody situation difficult. He threatened your custody? Marsh asked. My daughter was 2. Her mother had already left, and I was doing it alone. Voss knew that. Knew I couldn't afford a legal fight. Adrien felt old anger rising in his throat like acid. So yeah, he threatened me where it would hurt most. Walsh held out his hand. I need those recordings. Adrien transferred the files via email, watched Walsh's phone light up with the download notification. This changes things, Walsh said quietly. This changes everything. Evelyn was staring at Adrien like she'd never seen him before. Why didn't you use these 7 years ago? Because using them meant going public, and going public meant Voss would follow through on his threats. I couldn't risk it. But you kept them anyway, in case someday the risk was worth it. And now? Adrien thought about the engine in the hangar, about the plane that had made an emergency landing over Arizona, about all the people who could have died because one man decided profit mattered more than safety. Now it's worth it, he said. Walsh stood up. I need to brief my team. Mr. Cole, you're going to be our star witness, which means you need to prepare for Voss's lawyers to come at you hard. They'll dig into your employment history, your personal life, your finances. They'll try to paint you as disgruntled, vindictive, someone with an axe to grind. Let them try. They'll bring up your daughter, try to make you look like you're doing this for money. I'm not. I know that, but juries are unpredictable. Walsh packed his briefcase. We'll prep you thoroughly before any depositions. In the meantime, don't talk to anyone about the case. Not friends, not family, not reporters. Understood? Understood. After Walsh and Marsh left, Adrien and Evelyn sat in the conference room alone. Through the window, he could see engineers working on the disassembled engine. cataloging every component under FBI supervision. I need to ask you something, Evelyn said, and I need you to be honest. Okay? Why did you really come back here, to Apex? You could have worked anywhere. Adrien had been expecting this question since yesterday. You want the truth, or the version that makes me sound better? The truth. I came back because I was angry. Because every time I applied for an engineering job and got rejected, I knew Voss had made a call, put in a word, made sure I stayed blacklisted, and I thought... He stopped, choosing his words carefully. I thought if I came back as a janitor, if I made myself small and invisible, maybe eventually people would forget. Maybe I could work my way back up. Did it work? No, you can't work your way up from invisible. People don't see you. He looked at her. But it paid the bills, and it kept me close to the industry, even if I couldn't be part of it anymore. That must have been hard. Everything's hard. You just pick which hard you can live with. Evelyn stood up, walked to the window. The board wants me to resign. Adrien felt his stomach drop. What? They think a leadership change will restore investor confidence. Bring in someone clean, someone who wasn't here when all this happened. She laughed bitterly. Never mind that I'm the one who exposed it. Never mind that I'm trying to fix it. You can fight them. I could, but I'm not sure I want to anymore. She turned to face him. You asked yesterday if the company would survive this. I don't know if it will, and I'm not sure it deserves to. That's the anger talking. No, that's clarity. This company was rotten before I got here. I thought I could fix it by changing leadership, updating protocols, enforcing standards, but you can't fix corruption from the top down. It's too deep. So what do? I don't know yet. She crossed her arms. But I know I'm not walking away until every single one of those engines is inspected, until every person who cut corners or falsified reports or looked the other way is held accountable, even if it takes everything I have. That's going to make you enemies. I've already got enemies. Might as well earn them. David appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. They followed him to the diagnostic station, where a crowd of engineers had gathered around multiple screens. David pulled up a schematic, the connector harness from the failed engine, with various components highlighted in red. We've been analyzing the other installations, David explained, the ones with Voss's forged signature, and we found a pattern. He zoomed in on one of the highlighted sections. Every single harness uses the same non-specification aluminum sheathing. But here's the thing, they're all from the same manufacturer, a company called Meridian Components, based in Malaysia. I've never heard of them, Evelyn said. That's because they're not an approved supplier. They're not even registered with the FAA. David pulled up another screen. But their CEO is listed as Michael Hendricks. Hendricks, Adrien repeated, and any relation to Scott? His brother, and before you ask, yes, we checked. Scott didn't know. The FBI already cleared him. Evelyn leaned closer to the screen. So Voss set up a shell company to manufacture substandard parts, used his position here to approve them for installation, and pocketed the difference between cost and what he billed us. That's our theory. The FBI is going through the financials now, but it looks like Meridian Components invoiced Apex for copper alloy harnesses at standard rates, while actually delivering aluminum ones at a fraction of the cost. How much money are we talking about? Adrien asked. David did some quick math on his calculator. If he did this for all 9 engines, and the price difference is $2,700 per harness, times roughly 6 harnesses per engine, he looked up. About $150,000. He destroyed a company for $150,000, Evelyn said quietly. Plus whatever he made shorting the stock, David added. If he bought put options before the sabotage became public, he could have made millions when the price crashed. That's more like it, Evelyn muttered. Richard never did anything small. Adrien's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then something made him check. Storage unit 247. You should have cleaned it out better. Ice flooded his veins. What's wrong? Evelyn asked, seeing his face. He showed her the message. She read it, went pale. That's the storage unit where you kept the documentation, she said. Yeah. Who else knows about it? Just the FBI. I gave them the address yesterday. He looked at David. Can you trace this number? I can try, but if it's a burner, try anyway. While David worked, Adrien called the storage facility. The line rang 6 times before someone picked up. Secure storage, how can I help you? This is Adrien Cole, Unit 247. Has anyone accessed my unit in the past 24 hours? Let me check our logs. Keyboard sounds. Shows here that you accessed it yesterday at 4:18 p.m. Anyone else? Not according to our system, but we've been having issues with the gate reader. Sometimes it doesn't log visits properly. What kind of issues? Just glitches. It says it's a software thing. The voice was unconcerned, like gate readers failed all the time and it was no big deal. I need you to check my unit, right now. Sir, I can't just... Please, it's an emergency. The person sighed. Hold on. Adrien waited, his pulse hammering in his ears. Evelyn and David watched him in silence. After what felt like an hour but was probably 3 minutes, the voice came back on the line. Your unit's fine, he said. Doors locked, no signs of tampering. You're sure? I'm looking right at it. Whatever you're worried about, it's still secure. Adrien hung up, but the cold feeling in his stomach didn't go away. It's a bluff, Evelyn said. Voss is trying to rattle you. Maybe. You don't sound convinced, because I'm not. He looked at David. Any luck with the number? It's a burner, like you thought, purchased yesterday with cash at a convenience store in Galveston. No way to trace who bought it. Galveston's 2 hours from here, Evelyn said. Voss is in federal custody. He couldn't have bought it himself. No, but he could have had someone else do it. Adrien felt pieces clicking together in his head, a pattern forming that he didn't like. He's been planning this for months. You really think he didn't set up contingencies? People on the outside who could keep things moving if he got caught? Like who? I don't know, but whoever it is, they have access to information they shouldn't. They knew about the storage unit. They knew I'd given the documentation to the FBI. Marsh appeared in the doorway like she'd been summoned. We need to talk. Now. They reconvened in the conference room. Marsh looked tired, her suit rumpled like she'd been up all night. Voss lawyered up, she said without preamble. Refuses to say anything without his attorney present. But his phone records are interesting. She pulled out a tablet, showed them a call log. In the past month, he's made 47 calls to the same number. Burner phone registered to a fake name, but we tracked it to an address in Sugarland. Whose address? Evelyn asked. James Porter. The name hit Adrien like a fist. Porter. My old boss's boss, the one I went to about the safety report. The same. Turns out he and Voss have been business partners for years. Porter left Apex 6 months before you bought it, Evelyn. Set up a consulting firm that specializes in aerospace cost optimization. Let me guess, Evelyn said. One of his clients is Meridian Components. 50% owner, actually. The other 50 belongs to Voss through a shell corporation. Marsh closed the tablet. We're bringing Porter in for questioning this afternoon. But here's the problem. He's smart. Smarter than Voss, maybe. And he's had 6 months to cover his tracks. What about the financial records? Adrien asked. The money trail? We're working on it, but it's complicated. Multiple offshore accounts, layers of shell companies, cryptocurrency transfers. It's going to take weeks to untangle. We don't have weeks, Evelyn said. Every day this drags on, we lose more contracts, more money, more people. I know, but I can't make the evidence appear faster. Adrien's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Ask Porter about Phoenix. He'll understand. He showed it to Marsh. She read it, frowned. Phoenix, she repeated. Mean anything to you? No, but if someone's trying to give us a lead, maybe it should. Marsh made a call, stepped out of the room. When she came back 10 minutes later, her expression had changed. Phoenix is a project name, she said. Classified aerospace contract from 2018. Apex was the primary contractor. Porter was the program manager. It was canceled after preliminary testing showed structural failures. What kind of failures? David asked. The kind that would have killed people if they'd gone into production. Marsh looked at Adrien. And according to the internal investigation report, the failures were caused by non-specification materials in the propulsion system. Sound familiar? He did this before, Adrien said slowly. This isn't the first time Porter and Voss cut corners to save money. Looks that way. The Phoenix project was scrapped, the report was buried, and everyone moved on. Until now. Evelyn stood up. I want access to that report. Everything. Test results, findings, recommendations. They've been doing this for years. I need to know how deep it goes. I'll get you what I can, Marsh said, but some of it's classified, national security implications. Then declassify it. This is a public safety issue. It's not that simple. Make it simple. Evelyn's voice was steel. Because if there are more failures out there, more engines that could kill people, I need to know, and so does everyone else. Marsh looked like she wanted to argue, then just nodded. I'll make some calls. After she left, the room felt smaller somehow. Adrien looked at Evelyn, saw his own exhaustion reflected in her face. This is bigger than we thought, she said. Yeah. How do we fight something this big? Same way you fight anything, one piece at a time. His phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. Unknown number, but different from the one that had been texting. He answered. Hello? Mr. Cole. The voice was smooth, educated, familiar in a way that made Adrien's skin crawl. It's been a long time. Porter. Evelyn's head snapped up. I hear you've been busy, Porter continued, digging up old history, making trouble. I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding. We never had anything. No? I seem to recall a conversation 7 years ago where I promised to look into your concerns about Richard's decisions. I kept that promise. You buried the report. I made the economically sound choice, just like I'm making one now. Porter's voice hardened. You need to stop, Mr. Cole. Stop talking to the FBI. Stop giving them documentation. Stop pretending you're some kind of hero, because all you're doing is hurting people who don't deserve it. People like you? People like your daughter. The world stopped. If you threaten her, Adrien started, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply observing that single fathers have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of vulnerabilities. It would be tragic if something happened that made your custody situation more complicated. You son of a... Think about it, Mr. Cole. Think about what matters most, your pride or her safety. Porter hung up. Adrien stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear, rage and fear warring in his chest. Evelyn touched his arm. What did he say? He threatened Maya. His voice didn't sound like his own. He threatened my daughter. Did you record it? He looked at his phone, realized with a sinking feeling that he hadn't. It had all happened too fast. No. Then we tell Marsh. That's witness intimidation. Maybe worse. They can use it. It's his word against mine, and he's got lawyers who'll say I misunderstood, I'm emotional, I'm making it up. So what do we do? Adrien thought about Maya at school, drawing pictures of purple Mars and cats and spaceships, about how small she was, how trusting, how much she depended on him to keep her safe. And he thought about Porter and Voss and everyone else who'd spent years cutting corners and covering it up, secure in the knowledge that people like Adrien couldn't fight back without risking everything. We finish this, he said. We give the FBI everything they need to bury both of them so deep they never see daylight again. And if Porter follows through? He won't. Because if he does anything to my daughter, he knows I'll burn his entire world down. And I'll have nothing left to lose. Evelyn studied his face. You mean that? Every word. Good. She pulled out her phone. Because I'm done playing defense. It's time we went on offense. She made 3 calls in quick succession. The first to her head of security, instructing him to put a protection detail on Adrien and Maya immediately. The second to her lawyers, telling them to file a civil suit against Voss, Porter, and Meridian Components for fraud and reckless endangerment. The third to the PR team, authorizing them to release a statement about the investigation and Apex's full cooperation with federal authorities. You're declaring war, Adrien observed. No, I'm declaring honesty for the first time in this company's history. She looked at him. You with me? He thought about all the reasons to say no, about the risk, the cost, the possibility that they'd lose everything anyway. Then he thought about the alternative, staying silent, staying small, letting men like Voss and Porter win because fighting back was too dangerous. Yeah, he said, I'm with you. The rest of the day passed in a blur of FBI interviews, engineering reviews, and phone calls with lawyers. The protection detail showed up at Maya's school before lunch, 2 discreet professionals who looked like they could be parents waiting in the pickup line. Adrien called the school to explain, spoke with the principal, tried to make it sound less terrifying than it was. Is Maya in danger? The principal asked. her voice tight with concern. No, this is just a precaution. Mr. Cole, if there's a credible threat, there isn't, I promise, but I'd rather be safe. The principal agreed to let the security team observe from the parking lot. Adrien thanked her and hung up, feeling like he'd just lied to someone who trusted him. At 3 o'clock, he left Apex to pick up Maya himself. The protection detail followed at a distance, visible enough that anyone watching would know Maya was protected, discreet enough that she wouldn't notice. She came out of this building with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, talking to a friend about something that made them both laugh. When she saw Adrien, her face lit up. "You're early." "Thought I'd surprise you. Can Emma come over?" "Not today, sweetheart. Maybe this weekend." Maya said goodbye to her friend and climbed into the car. "Why are those people following us?" Adrien's heart skipped. "What people?" "The man and woman in the black car. They were here this morning too." Of course she'd noticed. Maya noticed everything. "They're friends of mine from work," he said, which was technically true. "They're just making sure we're safe." "Safe from what?" "Nothing specific, just being careful." Maya looked at him with those too perceptive 8-year-old eyes. "Are you in trouble?" "No, baby, I promise. You said that yesterday too." "And it was true yesterday too." She didn't look convinced, but she dropped it. Instead, she told him about her day, about the spelling test she'd aced, and the boy who'd gotten sent to the principal's office for putting a frog in someone's desk. They got home at 3:47. Adrien made her a snack while she did homework at the kitchen table. The protection detail parked across the street, visible through the living room window. His phone rang at 4:15. "Marsh." "We got him," she said. "Porter? Brought him in an hour ago. He's stonewalling, but we found something during the search of his office. Financial records linking him to Meridian Components, emails discussing the Phoenix project failures, and, this is the big one, a ledger showing payments made to someone inside Apex's current engineering team." Adrien felt cold. "Who?" "Marcus Reeves." The name hit like a punch. Marcus, who'd been running diagnostics yesterday morning. Marcus, who'd been first to check the engine when it screamed. Marcus, who'd had access to every system, every report, every piece of data. "He's been feeding them information," Adrien said. "Looks that way. We're bringing him in now." Through the kitchen doorway, Adrien could see Maya bent over her math homework, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. She looked so normal, so safe. "What happens next?" he asked. "We build the case. With Porter, Voss, and now Marcus all in custody, we can start connecting the dots. But Cole—" Marsh paused. "This is going to get ugly. They're going to fight hard, and they're going to come after you harder. You need to be prepared for that." "I am." "Your daughter, too. They might try to use her." "Let them try." Marsh was quiet for a moment. "You're a good father. Whatever happens, remember that." "Thanks." He hung up and went to sit with Maya while she worked on fractions. She explained her process to him with the patience of someone teaching a much younger child, pointing out where he'd gotten confused. "It's okay, Daddy," she said. "Math is hard for old people." "I'm 32. "That's pretty old." He smiled despite everything. "Thanks, sweetheart." At 6, Evelyn called. "Marcus is singing," she said. "Gave up Porter and Voss in exchange for a plea deal. Turns out he's been on their payroll for 2 years, feeding them information about installations, inspections, internal investigations, everything." "How many people knew?" "Just him. Porter kept his network small and compartmentalized, smarter that way." "Not smart enough." "No, not nearly." She sighed. "The board accepted my resignation this afternoon." Adrien felt something clench in his chest. "Evelyn, it's fine. Actually, it's better than fine, because they also accepted my terms. Full transparency about the investigation, mandatory safety reviews on all installations, and a restructuring that puts engineering oversight directly under the board instead of executive management. That's what you wanted. That's what the company needs. Whether it survives or not, at least it'll be honest." She paused. "Your contract came through. Jennifer sent it over this afternoon. Same terms we discussed, with the addition of a protection clause if Porter or Voss try anything." "Thanks." "Don't thank me. You earned it." Another pause. "How's your daughter?" Adrien looked at Maya, who'd abandoned her homework to build something with Legos on the floor. "She's perfect," he said. "Good. Keep her that way." After dinner, after homework, after bath time and stories, Maya finally asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, are the bad people going to hurt us?" They were sitting on her bed, her nightlight casting shadows on the walls. "No, sweetheart, they're not. But that's why those people are following us, to protect us from bad people. To make sure we're safe. That's different." How? He thought about how to explain it. Sometimes when you do the right thing, other people get upset. Not because you did something wrong, but because the right thing makes them look bad. So we have friends watching out for us, just in case those people decide to be mean. "What did you do that was right?" "I told the truth about something that happened a long time ago, something I should have told the truth about sooner." Maya considered this. "Is that why you were sad yesterday? Because you had to tell the truth?" "Yeah." "But telling the truth is good." "It is." "Then why were you sad?" "Because sometimes the truth is complicated and scary, and it makes things harder before they get better." She nodded like this made perfect sense. "Like when I had to tell you I broke your coffee mug." "Exactly like that." "But you weren't mad." "No, I was proud of you for being honest." "Are people proud of you?" He pulled her into a hug. "I don't know, sweetheart, but you're proud of me, and that's the only thing that matters." She hugged him back, fierce and tight. "I'm always proud of you, Daddy." "I know. Now go to sleep." "Will the protection people be there tomorrow?" "Probably." "Okay. Good night." "Good night, baby." He left her door cracked open the way she liked it and went to collapse on the couch. His phone showed 17 missed calls and 32 messages. He ignored all of them except one from Marsh. "Porter's lawyers are already working on bail. Thought you should know." Adrien stared at the message for a long time. Then he got up, checked the locks on all the doors and windows, and looked out at the protection details still parked across the street. Tomorrow he'd go back to Apex. Back to being an engineer instead of a janitor. Back to fighting a battle that should have been fought 7 years ago. But tonight, he was just a father making sure his daughter was safe, and that at least was something he knew how to do. He fell asleep on the couch with his phone in his hand and the sound of Maya's breathing carrying softly down the hall. Outside, the protection detail kept watch, and somewhere in federal custody, 3 men who'd bet everything on nobody caring enough to fight back were learning exactly how wrong they'd been. The morning arrived with rain, the kind that turned Houston's streets into rivers and made traffic a special kind of hell. Adrien sat in his car outside Maya's school, watching her disappear through the front doors with her backpack and her lunchbox, and no idea that her father's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The protection detail was still there. Different people. The shifts must have changed overnight, but same black sedan, same careful distance. Maya had waved at them on the way in. They'd waved back. His phone rang before he could pull out of the parking lot. Walsh, the prosecutor. "Porter made bail," Walsh said without greeting. $2 million cash. "He's out as of an hour ago." Adrien's stomach dropped. "You said he was a flight risk." Judge disagreed. "House arrest, ankle monitor, surrendered passport. But yeah, he's out." "And Voss?" "Still in custody. His bail hearing is tomorrow." Walsh paused. "Look, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but Porter's got resources. We expected this." "Did you expect him to threaten my daughter?" "We have no proof he did that. The phone call can't be traced, you didn't record it, and his lawyers will say it never happened." Walsh's voice softened slightly. "I know it's frustrating, but we're building a case that'll put him away for 20 years. That takes time." "How much time?" "Months? Maybe longer if they fight hard." Adrien ended the call and sat in the parking lot watching rain hammer the windshield. Months. Months of looking over his shoulder. Months of protection details following Maya to school. Months of wondering if Porter would decide that intimidation wasn't enough. He was 15 minutes late getting to Apex. The building looked different somehow, smaller, diminished, like it had been holding its breath for so long that it had forgotten how to expand. Or maybe that was just him projecting. Jennifer met him at the entrance with an umbrella and a folder. "Your contract," she said, handing it over. "Already countersigned by the board. You're officially back on the engineering team as of today." Adrien flipped through it. The salary made his eyes widen slightly, more than he'd made 7 years ago, adjusted for inflation like Evelyn had promised. health insurance, dental, vision, vacation days. The Wednesday arrangement in writing, clear as day. He didn't know how to finish the sentence. What you should have had all along, Jennifer said. Evelyn made sure of it before she left. She's already gone? Officially resigned at midnight. The board announced it this morning, along with the formation of an independent safety committee. Jennifer held the umbrella higher as they walked toward the main building. Stocks up 3% on the news. Investors like transparency, apparently. Who's running things now? Interim CEO is Helen Vargas. She's been on the board for 6 years, aerospace background, actually knows what she's doing. First thing she did was authorize full safety reviews on every engine we've delivered in the past 3 years. That's going to cost millions. She doesn't care. Says if we can't afford to do it right, we shouldn't be doing it at all. Jennifer smiled slightly. I think you'll like her. Inside, the building felt different too. People were actually talking to each other instead of rushing past with their heads down. The FBI had cleared out most of their equipment, leaving only a small team to monitor the ongoing investigation. The hangar was open again, though the failed engine still sat in pieces, each component tagged and photographed for evidence. David found Adrien in the propulsion lab, which looked exactly like it had 7 years ago, except for new computers and a coffee maker that actually worked. Welcome back, David said. Officially, this time. Feels weird. It should. You went from janitor to senior engineer in 72 hours. That's got to be some kind of record. David gestured around the lab. This is your space now. Well, ours. We're sharing it until they hire more people. They're hiring. Helen's bringing in a whole new engineering team. She fired Marcus, obviously, but also 3 other guys who knew about the Phoenix Project failures and never reported them. Says she wants people who actually give a damn about safety. Adrien walked around the lab, trailing his fingers along equipment he hadn't been allowed to touch in years. A stress testing rig, a thermal imaging camera, the diagnostic computer with 3 monitors that he used to spend 12 hours a day staring at. You okay? David asked. Just remembering. Good memories or bad ones? Both. Adrien turned to face him. What happened after I left? The real story, not the official version. David leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms. Voss pushed the Phoenix Project through despite the test failures. Told everyone the problems were fixable, that we just needed to optimize the design. But the optimization never happened. He just had Porter approve cheaper materials and hope nobody noticed. And nobody did. Nobody wanted to. The project was tied to bonuses, promotions, quarterly targets. Easier to trust that the guy at the top knew what he was doing than to ask uncomfortable questions. David looked away. I was here then. I saw the test results. I should have said something. Why didn't you? Because I had a mortgage and 2 kids in college, and I convinced myself that smarter people than me had already looked at it. He met Adrien's eyes. I'm not proud of that. But you're still here. Helen gave us a choice. Cooperate with the investigation and stay, or stay silent and leave. Most people chose to cooperate. He pushed off from the workbench. Anyway, you've got a meeting at 10 with the safety committee. They want to hear your assessment of the inspection protocols. I don't have an assessment yet. I just got here. Then you've got 45 minutes to develop one. Welcome back to engineering. The meeting was in the same conference room where Adrien had been interviewed by the FBI, which felt like some kind of cosmic irony. The safety committee consisted of Helen Vargas, 2 board members Adrien didn't recognize, and a woman introduced as Dr. Sarah Chen, an independent aerospace consultant brought in specifically to review Apex's procedures. Helen was in her early 50s with gray hair she didn't bother to hide and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book. She shook Adrien's hand with a firm grip. Mr. Cole, I've read your file, both versions, the one from 7 years ago and the one from this week. And I wish we'd had this conversation 7 years ago. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. She gestured to a chair. Sit. We've got questions. They spent the next 90 minutes going through everything. The original safety report, the Phoenix Project, the suppressed documentation, the pattern of cost-cutting that had led to 9 compromised engines. Adrien answered honestly, didn't try to soften anything, laid out exactly how systematic the corruption had been. Dr. Chen took notes throughout, occasionally asking for clarification. When Adrien finished, she set down her pen and looked at him thoughtfully. You filed your original report through proper channels, she said. Went to your supervisor, then his supervisor, then HR. And at every level, you were shut down. Yes, ma'am. So the question becomes, how do we build a system where that doesn't happen again? Where engineers can raise safety concerns without risking their careers? Adrien thought about that. You can't. Not completely. There's always going to be pressure to cut corners, hit deadlines, save money. The only thing you can do is make the cost of ignoring safety higher than the cost of addressing it. Meaning if someone reports a problem and it gets buried, there have to be consequences. Real ones. Not just a slap on the wrist or a shuffled position. Termination, legal liability, criminal charges if warranted. One of the board members spoke up, an older man with a Texas accent. That's going to make people afraid to report anything. Create a culture of fear. No, Adrien said. It's going to create a culture of accountability. Fear is what happens when you report a problem and get punished for it. Accountability is when the person who buried your report gets punished instead. Helen smiled. I like him. Can we keep him? According to his contract, he's already ours, Jennifer said from the doorway. But speaking of accountability, the FBI just released their preliminary findings on the financial investigation. She pulled up a document on the conference room screen. Numbers, spreadsheets, transaction records that made Adrien's head hurt just looking at them. Short version, Jennifer explained, is that Porter and Voss ran the scheme for 3 years. Started small with the Phoenix project, then expanded once they realized nobody was checking their work. Total amount embezzled is somewhere around $4 million, plus another $8 million in short-selling profits from tanking the stock price. $12 million, one of the board members breathed. They destroyed this company for $12 million. They destroyed it for greed, Helen corrected. The money was just the scorekeeping. She looked at Adrien. The FBI wants you to testify at the grand jury hearing next month. I figured. You comfortable with that? Adrien thought about Porter's threat, about Maya asking if the bad people were going to hurt them. Not particularly, but I'll do it anyway. Good, because your testimony is the cornerstone of their case. Without it, Voss and Porter might walk. They're not walking. Helen studied him for a moment. You've got a daughter, right? 8 years old? Yeah. And Porter threatened her. How did you? Walsh told me. Wanted to make sure we understood the security implications. She leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to provide you with a company security detail, separate from the police protection. 2 guards, round the clock, until this is over. Non-negotiable. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. Because if anything happens to you or your daughter, this company gets sued into oblivion, and Porter gets to claim witness intimidation made his trial unfair. So we're protecting you for everyone's sake, including ours. She said it matter-of-factly, without sentiment, which somehow made it more reassuring than if she'd tried to be comforting. Adrien nodded. Okay. Good. Now get out of here and go do some actual engineering. I didn't bring you back just to sit in meetings. He spent the rest of the morning in the lab with David, reviewing diagnostic protocols and arguing about stress testing procedures. It felt normal in a way nothing had felt normal in years. People stopped by to say hello, some he recognized from his first stint at Apex, others who'd heard about him through the rumor mill and wanted to meet the janitor-turned-engineer who'd blown the whole thing open. Around noon, his phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code was local. He almost didn't answer. Then something made him pick up. Mr. Cole? The voice was female, unfamiliar. My name is Rebecca Shaw. I'm a reporter with the Houston Chronicle. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about the situation at Apex Aeronautics. I can't comment on an ongoing investigation. I understand, but I'm not asking about the investigation specifically. I'm asking about you. About what it's like to be vindicated after 7 years of being ignored. Adrien felt his jaw tighten. I'm not interested in being a story. Too late. You already are. The question is whether you want that story to be told accurately or whether you want me to piece it together from court documents and secondhand sources. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a chance to be heard. There's a difference. Rebecca's voice softened. Look, I know you've been through hell. I know you're trying to protect your daughter, but people need to know what happened here. They need to know that someone tried to do the right thing and got crushed for it. And they need to know that it took 7 years for anyone to listen. Why? Because it matters. Because the next person who wants to blow the whistle needs to know that eventually, sometimes, the truth actually wins. Adrien closed his eyes. I need to think about it. Fair enough. I'll call back tomorrow. She hung up before he could say anything else. David had been pretending not to listen, but he looked up when Adrien set down the phone. Reporter? He asked. Yeah. You going to talk to her? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me just wants this whole thing to go away. It's not going away, not for a while. David pulled up a news website on his computer. You've already been mentioned in 3 national outlets and probably a dozen local ones. They're calling you a whistleblower. I'm not a whistleblower. I just told the truth. That's what a whistleblower is. Adrien looked at the screen, saw his name in headlines he hadn't been prepared for. This is going to affect Maya. Probably. Kids at school might say stuff. Parents might ask questions. David paused. But she'll survive it. Kids are tougher than we think. She shouldn't have to be tough. She's 8. No, she shouldn't. But she's got a dad who's showing her what it looks like to do the right thing even when it's hard. That's worth something. Before Adrien could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Maya's school. Mr. Cole, this is Principal Williams. Could you please call me when you have a moment? His stomach clenched. He stepped out into the hallway and called immediately. Mr. Cole, thank you for calling back. Principal Williams sounded careful, measured. I wanted to let you know that Maya got into a small altercation during recess today. Is she okay? She's fine, but another student said something unkind about you and Maya pushed him. Adrien leaned against the wall. What did he say? Something about you being on the news. The boy's parents apparently saw a segment this morning. Principal Williams sighed. I've spoken with both children. Maya's not in serious trouble. She's in my office now, more upset than anything else. But I thought you should know. Can I talk to her? Of course. Hold on. A moment later, Maya's voice came through, small and shaky. Daddy? Hey, sweetheart, you okay? I didn't mean to push him. He just said you were a liar and I got mad. I know, baby, but you can't push people, even when they say mean things. But he was wrong. You're not a liar. No, I'm not. But pushing him doesn't prove that. It just gets you in trouble. She sniffled. Am I in trouble with you too? No, just disappointed that you used your hands instead of your words. I tried words first. He didn't listen. Adrien closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every choice he'd made in the past week pressing down on him. I know it's hard, Maya, and I'm sorry this is happening, but you need to promise me you'll tell a teacher next time instead of pushing. Okay, I promise. She paused. Daddy, why are people saying mean things about you? Because sometimes when you tell the truth, other people don't like it. They try to make you feel bad so you'll stop. Are you going to stop? No, sweetheart, I'm not. Good, because you always tell me lying is bad. It is bad. Then you should keep telling the truth, even if people are mean about it. He smiled despite everything. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're old. I'm 32. I know, that's ancient. Principal Williams came back on the line. She's fine, Mr. Cole. A little shaken up, but fine. I'm going to keep her in the office for the rest of recess, just to give everyone time to cool off. Thank you. And the other boy? His parents will be speaking with him about respecting others, regardless of what they see on the news. Her voice firmed slightly. I want to be clear that this school does not tolerate bullying of any kind. If Maya experiences any more problems, we'll address them immediately. I appreciate that. He hung up and stood in the hallway for a long moment, trying to pull himself together. This was what he'd been afraid of, that his choices would bleed into Maya's life, make her a target, hurt her in ways he couldn't protect her from. Jennifer appeared around the corner. You okay? You look like someone kicked you. My daughter got in a fight at school because some kid saw me on the news. Shit, I'm sorry. Not your fault. No, but it's still shit. She hesitated. For what it's worth, my kids are 13 and 15. They've been through similar stuff. Different reasons, but same result. They survive it. They're tougher than you think. That's what David said. Because it's true. And because eventually the news cycle moves on and people find something else to talk about. How long does that take? Depends on whether anything else explodes. She winced. Poor choice of words. But you get what I mean. The afternoon dragged. Adrien tried to focus on work, reviewing test protocols, updating diagnostic procedures, doing the job he'd been hired to do. But his mind kept drifting to Maya, to the boy who'd called him a liar, to the casual cruelty of 8-year-olds who didn't understand what they were saying. At 2:45, he left to pick her up from school. The protection detail followed. The rain had stopped, leaving the world wet and gleaming and somehow more fragile than before. Maya came out with her teacher, who gave Adrien a sympathetic look and a thumbs up. Maya climbed into the car without her usual bounce. "How was the rest of your day?" Adrien asked. "Fine." "Just fine?" "Daddy, I don't want to talk about it." He knew better than to push. They drove home in silence, her looking out the window, him trying to figure out how to fix something that might not be fixable. When they got home, she went straight to her room. Adrien let her go, gave her space, tried not to hover. An hour later, she emerged with red eyes and a determined expression. "I'm sorry I pushed Jordan," she announced. "I know you are, sweetheart. But I'm not sorry I got mad at him, because he was wrong. That's fair. And if he says it again, I'm going to tell the teacher, but I'm also going to tell him exactly why he's wrong." Adrien pulled her into a hug. "That's my girl." She hugged him back, fierce and tight. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Are you scared?" The question caught him off guard. "Sometimes. Why?" "Because I am. A little bit. Not all the time, but sometimes." "What are you scared of?" "That the bad people are going to do something to you, or to me, or that things are going to change and I won't like it." He held her tighter. "Things are already changing, baby, but that's not always bad. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the changes are good ones." "Promise?" "Promise." That evening, after dinner and homework and the usual bedtime routine, Adrien sat on the couch with his laptop and pulled up the Houston Chronicle's website. He found Rebecca Shaw's byline, read 3 of her articles. They were good, balanced, thorough, the kind of journalism that actually cared about getting things right. He typed out an email. "Ms. Shaw, I'll talk to you. But I have conditions. No photographs of my daughter, no mention of her name or her school. And if I say something is off the record, it stays off the record. Adrien Cole." The response came back in under 5 minutes. Agreed. "When works for you?" "Tomorrow, 6 p.m. My office at Apex. See you then." He closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to Maya breathe softly down the hall. The protection detail was still outside. Porter was still out on bail. Voss was still fighting the charges. And tomorrow, Adrien would sit down with a reporter and put everything on the record. It felt terrifying and necessary in equal measure. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Heard about Maya's school incident. Is she okay?" "She's fine. Pushed a kid who called me a liar." "Smart kid. The pushing part, not the liar part." "Yeah." "How are you holding up?" Adrien thought about how to answer that. He settled on honesty. Scared, angry, tired, but still here. That's all you can do. Be here. Keep fighting. The rest will work itself out. You really believe that? No. But I'm trying to. He smiled despite himself. "I'm talking to a reporter tomorrow. Chronicle." "Good. People need to hear this from you, not from court documents." That's what she said. She's right. Tell your story. Own it. Don't let them define you. "Thanks, Evelyn. Anytime." "And Adrien? You're doing the right thing, even when it doesn't feel like it." He set down the phone and closed his eyes. Outside, rain started falling again, soft and steady. The protection detail's headlights cut through the darkness. Somewhere across the city, Porter and Voss were probably strategizing with their lawyers, planning their defense, figuring out how to discredit the man who'd refused to stay quiet. But for now, in this moment, Adrien was just a father sitting in his living room while his daughter slept safely down the hall. And that was enough. The next day arrived with clear skies and temperatures that promised summer wasn't far off. Adrien dropped Maya at school with the protection detail shadowing them as usual. She waved at them again. They waved back again. It was becoming routine, which somehow made it both better and worse. Work was steady. a morning meeting about revised safety protocols, an afternoon session reviewing the inspection reports from the 9 compromised engines. All of them showed the same pattern: aluminum instead of copper alloy, Meridian Components as the supplier, Marcus's signature on the approval forms. "It's almost elegant in its simplicity," David observed. "If nobody had bothered to actually look, they could have gotten away with it for years." "They did get away with it for years," Adrien reminded him. "Fair point." At 5:30, Adrien cleared his desk and headed to the small conference room he'd reserved. Rebecca Shaw arrived at exactly 6 p.m., carrying a leather bag and a digital recorder. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of eyes that suggested she'd heard every excuse in the world and believed none of them. "Mr. Cole," she said, shaking his hand, "thank you for agreeing to this. Call me Adrien." "Rebecca." She set up her recorder on the table. "Ground rules before we start. Everything is on the record unless you specifically say otherwise. I'll send you quotes before publication to verify accuracy, and I won't use your daughter's name or identifying information." "Agreed." "Good." She pressed record. "Let's start at the beginning. 7 years ago, you filed a safety report about the GE9X engine connector harness system. Walk me through what happened." So he did. He told her about the design flaw he'd identified, about Voss's dismissal of his concerns, about Porter's promise to look into it that never materialized, about the meeting where Voss had made it clear that pursuing the issue would cost Adrien everything. "And you had a 2-year-old daughter at the time," Rebecca said. "Yeah." "Her mother?" "Left when Maya was 6 months old, decided single parenthood wasn't for her." Adrien kept his voice neutral. "So it was just me and Maya. And Voss knew that. Everyone knew that. I wasn't exactly hiding it. So when he threatened your career, he was threatening your ability to support your daughter." "That's how I saw it, yeah." Rebecca made notes. "What happened after you resigned?" "I couldn't find work. Every aerospace company I applied to, I'd get to the final round and then get a rejection. No explanation, just, we've decided to go another direction. After about 6 months, I realized I'd been blacklisted." "How'd you survive?" "Odd jobs at first, construction, warehouse work, whatever paid cash. Then I saw Apex was hiring janitorial staff. They didn't ask for references, didn't care about my engineering background, just needed someone to clean." "And you took it." "I needed the health insurance. Maya had some medical issues when she was younger. Nothing serious now, but expensive to treat. Company plan at Apex covered everything with no waiting period." "So you went back to the place that had pushed you out?" "Yeah." "That must have been hard." Adrien laughed without humor. "Every single day. Walking past the labs I used to work in, seeing engineers doing the job I used to do, knowing that if I just kept my mouth shut, that could still be me." He paused. "But Maya had doctor's appointments and prescriptions and a roof over her head. So I pushed the mop and kept my head down and told myself it was temporary. For 3 years." "For 3 years." Rebecca was quiet for a moment, just listening to the recording play back their conversation. Then she looked up. "What changed? What made you speak up again when the engine failed?" "I heard the sound," Adrien said simply. "The same sound I'd warned them about 7 years ago, and I knew if I stayed quiet, people were going to die. Not hypothetically, not eventually. Soon. Maybe days, maybe hours." "So you couldn't stay silent anymore?" "No. Not this time. Even though you knew what it would cost you." "I didn't know what it would cost me. I just knew what it would cost if I didn't." Rebecca made more notes. "Porter and Voss have both pleaded not guilty. Their lawyers are arguing that the safety issues were the result of multiple failures across the organization, not individual criminal acts. What's your response to that?" "My response is that I was in the room when Voss decided to bury my report. I have recordings of him threatening my career and my custody if I went public. And I have documentation showing that he and Porter personally approved the use of substandard materials to increase their profit margins." Adrien leaned forward. "This wasn't a systemic failure. This was 2 men choosing money over safety, over and over again, for years." "You sound angry." "I am angry. My daughter got pushed around at school because some kid saw me on the news and decided I was a liar. I've got security details following me everywhere because Porter threatened my family. And somewhere out there, 9 planes are flying with compromised engines because these men decided that cutting corners was worth the risk. He stopped, pulled himself back. So yeah, I'm angry, but I'm also determined because they don't get to win. Rebecca smiled slightly. That's a good quote. They talked for another hour about the investigation, about Apex's restructuring, about what Adrien hoped would change in the industry. When they finally finished, it was past 7 and Adrien was exhausted. Thank you for this, Rebecca said, packing up her recorder. I know it wasn't easy. When will the story run? Sunday front page, if my editor agrees. I'll send you the draft Friday for fact-checking. Okay. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Not just with the investigation, but with this interview. People need to know that whistleblowers aren't heroes. They're just normal people making impossible choices. That's exactly what we are. After she left, Adrien sat in the conference room for a long time, staring at nothing. His phone showed texts from Maya's aftercare asking when he'd pick her up. He was late again. He drove through evening traffic, thinking about everything he'd said, wondering if he'd revealed too much or not enough. The protection detail followed him to the aftercare center, waited while he collected Maya, then trailed them home. Long day? Maya asked from the back seat. Yeah. Me too. We had a substitute teacher and she was mean. How mean? She made us do math during art time. That's basically illegal. I'm not sure that's actually illegal, sweetheart. It should be. At home, they ordered Chinese food and ate it while watching a nature documentary about penguins. Maya fell asleep on the couch halfway through, her head on Adrien's lap. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in her doorway watching her sleep. Tomorrow was Wednesday, his guaranteed day off. They'd planned to go to the zoo, just the two of them, like they did most Wednesdays when weather allowed. Now he wasn't sure if that was safe, if Porter would try something, if the protection detail could keep them secure in a crowded public place. His phone rang. Walsh. Porter's lawyers filed a motion to suppress your recordings, he said. They're arguing that you obtained them through coercion and fraud. That's insane. Texas is one-party consent. I know. The motion will be denied, but it shows they're getting desperate. Walsh paused. It also means they're going to come at you hard during the trial, try to discredit you, make you look vindictive or unstable. Let them try. Adrien, I need you to understand something. These are powerful men with expensive lawyers and a lot to lose. They're going to dig into every aspect of your life, your employment history, your financial records, your relationship with your daughter's mother, anything they can use to make you look unreliable. There's nothing to find. There's always something. A missed payment, a bad reference, an angry email you sent years ago. They'll find it and twist it until you look like the bad guy. So what do? Keep your head down. Don't engage with reporters except Rebecca Shaw. She's trustworthy. Don't respond to social media. Don't talk about the case with anyone except your lawyer and me. And for the love of everything, don't give them any new ammunition. I'll do my best. That's all I'm asking. Adrien hung up and went to sit on the porch. The protection detail was visible across the street, a constant reminder that his life had become something he barely recognized. The neighborhood was quiet, crickets and distant traffic, and the occasional bark of a dog. He thought about Maya asking if he was scared, about telling her the truth, that yes, sometimes he was, that fear was just part of being human, but so was courage, and so was standing up when it would be easier to stay down. His phone buzzed with an email. Rebecca's draft article arrived early for fact-checking. He opened it and started reading. She'd titled it, The Janitor Who Wouldn't Stay Quiet, One Man's 7-Year Fight for Aerospace Safety. It was good, honest, fair to everyone except the people who didn't deserve fairness. He made a few small corrections. Maya was 8, not 9. The connector harness cost difference was $2,700, not $3,000, and sent it back. Then he went inside, checked the locks one more time, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow was Wednesday. Tomorrow, for one day at least, he'd just be a dad taking his daughter to the zoo. The investigation could wait. The trial could wait. The fear could wait. For one day, they'd just be normal. And maybe that would be enough to carry them through whatever came next. Wednesday morning came with the kind of sunshine that felt like a promise. Maya was up before her alarm, already dressed and bouncing on Adrien's bed by 6:30. "Zoo day!" she announced. You promised we could see the new penguin exhibit. I did promise that, Adrien agreed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Give me 20 minutes to shower and we'll go. Can we get ice cream? It's not even 7 in the morning. I meant later, at the zoo. Can we? We'll see. That means yes, Maya said confidently, and bounced out of the room. Adrien showered and dressed, trying not to think about the protection detail that would follow them to the zoo. Trying not to think about Porter out on bail somewhere, or the trial that would start in a few weeks, or the fact that his face would be on the front page of the Houston Chronicle in 4 days. For today, he was just going to be a dad. That was all. They left the house at 7:45, the protection detail falling in behind them like a shadow. Maya waved at them from the back seat. This time, they didn't wave back. They were focused, alert, scanning their surroundings in a way that made Adrien's stomach tight. The zoo opened at 9. They were there by 8:52, waiting in the parking lot with a handful of other early arrivals. The protection detail parked 3 spaces away, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. Why do they keep following us? Maya asked, not for the first time. Just being careful, sweetheart. But we're at the zoo. What's going to happen at the zoo? Adrien wished he had a good answer for that. Probably nothing, but it's their job to make sure. Maya seemed to accept this, or at least stopped asking. When the gates opened, they headed straight for the penguin exhibit, a new installation that had cost the zoo $3 million and generated enough local press that even Adrien had heard about it. The penguins were smaller than Maya had expected, and funnier than Adrien had anticipated. They waddled around their habitat with an earnestness that suggested they took their penguin duties very seriously, occasionally diving into the water with surprising grace. That one's my favorite, Maya declared, pointing at a penguin that seemed to be yelling at the others. His name is Gerald. How do you know his name is Gerald? Because he looks like a Gerald. See? He's bossy. They spent 40 minutes watching the penguins, then moved on to the elephants, the giraffes, the big cats sleeping in the shade. The zoo was filling up with families, school groups, couples on dates, normal people doing normal things, unburdened by federal investigations and legal threats. Adrien kept one eye on the protection detail, who'd split up, one trailing at a distance, the other positioned ahead, creating a perimeter. They were good at their job, professional and unobtrusive. Maya had stopped noticing them after the first hour. At noon, they stopped for lunch at the zoo's cafe. Maya got chicken nuggets shaped like animals, which she found hilarious. Adrien got a sandwich he didn't taste, and coffee that was somehow worse than the burnt stuff at the pizza place. His phone rang while they were eating. He almost ignored it, then saw it was Walsh. I need to take this, he told Maya. Stay here, okay? Can I get a cookie while you're gone? Fine. 1 cookie. He stepped outside into the Texas heat. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Walsh said, which meant something was definitely wrong. Voss's bail hearing happened this morning. Judge denied it. He's staying in custody until trial. That's good news, isn't it? It should be. But Porter's lawyers filed an emergency motion for protective custody, claiming he's receiving death threats. Is he? According to him, yes. Anonymous emails, phone calls, someone spray-painted murderer on his driveway. Adrien felt cold despite the heat. You think it's real? I think Porter's smart enough to manufacture a threat if it serves his interests. Judge is reviewing the motion now. If it's approved, Porter gets moved to a secure facility and gets to play the victim card at trial. Can you stop it? Not if the threats are real, or real enough. Walsh paused. How's your Wednesday going? I'm at the zoo with my daughter. Good. Keep it that way. Enjoy your day. I'll handle this. Adrien hung up and went back inside. Maya had acquired not 1 cookie, but 3, and was arranging them on her napkin with the focus of a surgeon. You said 1, Adrien observed. The lady felt bad for me because I told her my dad was on the phone dealing with work stuff. Maya looked up with complete innocence. So she gave me extras. You manipulated the cookie lady. I prefer to think of it as strategic negotiation. Adrien couldn't help but smile. Where'd you learn that phrase? You say it sometimes when you're talking about work. She bit into a cookie. Am I in trouble? No, but we're having a conversation later about honesty versus manipulation. Okay, can we see the monkeys now? They spent the afternoon wandering through exhibits, stopping at whatever caught Maya's interest. The protection detail followed, silent and watchful. Around 3 o'clock, Maya started to drag, the early morning wake-up catching up with her. Ice cream time? Adrien suggested. She perked up immediately. Yes! They found a vendor near the exit, got 2 cones, chocolate for Maya, vanilla for Adrien. They sat on a bench in the shade, eating in comfortable silence. Daddy? Maya said after a while. Yeah, sweetheart? Is everything going to be okay? The question was so direct, so stripped of the usual 8-year-old deflection, that Adrien felt his throat tighten. I think so, he said carefully. It might take a while, and it might be hard sometimes, but yeah, I think we're going to be okay. Do you promise? I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, but I can promise that whatever happens, we'll deal with it together. Maya considered this while licking melted chocolate off her hand. That's good enough, she decided. They finished their ice cream and headed to the car. The drive home was quiet, Maya dozing in the back seat, the protection detail maintaining their distance. Adrien's phone buzzed with texts he didn't read, calls he didn't answer. For these few hours, the world had shrunk to just him and his daughter, and the simple act of being present. When they got home, Maya went straight to her room to work on a drawing she'd started that morning. Adrien sat on the porch with a beer he didn't really want and watched the sun start its descent toward the horizon. His phone rang. Evelyn. How was the zoo? She asked. Good, normal. How'd you know we went to the zoo? You told me last week that Wednesdays were for Maya. I assumed you'd stick to routine. She paused. I'm calling because Helen wants to offer you something. I already have a job. Not that kind of offer. She wants to create a new position, Director of Technical Risk and Flight Safety. Independent oversight, reports directly to the board, can't be overridden by executive management. It's specifically designed to prevent what happened with Voss from happening again. Adrien felt his pulse quicken. And she wants me for it? You're the obvious choice. You've got the technical expertise, the institutional knowledge, and a proven track record of actually giving a damn about safety. That's a big job. It's a necessary job, one that should have existed all along. Evelyn's voice softened. Look, I know you just got your engineering position back. I know you probably want to keep your head down and just do the work. But this is a chance to actually fix the system. Make sure the next person who sees a problem doesn't have to choose between speaking up and feeding their kid. Adrien thought about his old safety report, buried in a drawer somewhere, about all the things that could have been prevented if someone had just listened 7 years ago. What's the salary? He asked. Evelyn named a number that made his head spin, nearly triple what he was making now. That's market rate for someone with your experience and credentials, plus it comes with a staff budget, travel allowance, and whatever resources you need to do the job right. And the Wednesday arrangement? Non-negotiable. It's in the job description. Helen was very specific about that. I need to think about it. Take your time, but not too much time. She wants someone in place before the trial starts. After hanging up, Adrien sat on the porch thinking. Director of Technical Risk and Flight Safety. A title that meant something. Authority to actually make changes. Money enough that Maya could go to any college she wanted, that they could move out of this apartment into something with a yard. But also a target on his back. More visibility, more pressure, more opportunities for people like Porter to come after him. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your zoo trip. Maya looked happy. Would be a shame if something changed that. Adrien's blood went cold. He called Walsh immediately. Someone's watching us, he said when Walsh picked up. They knew we were at the zoo. They mentioned Maya by name. Forward me the text, now. Adrien did. Walsh was silent for a long moment. I'm escalating this to the FBI, he said finally. This crosses the line from intimidation to stalking. They'll trace the number, pull security footage from the zoo, figure out who's behind this. It's Porter. Probably, but we need proof. Walsh paused. In the meantime, I'm recommending you increase security. Maybe keep Maya home from school for a few days. She can't live in hiding. Better hiding than... Walsh stopped himself. Just think about it, please. Adrien ended the call and went inside to check on Maya. She was on her floor with crayons everywhere, working on her drawing. It was the zoo, penguins and elephants, and a stick figure that was clearly her holding hands with a taller stick figure that was clearly him. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway. Do you like it? I love it. Good, because it's for you, for your office at work. His throat tightened again. Thank you, sweetheart. That night, after Maya was asleep, Adrien sat at his kitchen table and made a list. Not of things to do, but of things he knew to be true. Porter was escalating. The trial was weeks away. Maya was in danger as long as Porter was free. The protection detail was good, but not infallible. Something had to change. At 11:47 p.m., he called Walsh back. I want to make a deal, Adrien said. What kind of deal? Porter's out on bail because the judge thinks house arrest is enough. But it's not enough. He's still making threats, still trying to intimidate witnesses. If we can prove that, the judge will revoke his bail. We're already working on that. Then work faster, because I'm not waiting for something to happen to my daughter before you take this seriously. Walsh was quiet for a moment. What are you proposing? Let him come after me. Set it up so I'm vulnerable, so he thinks he has an opening. And when he makes his move, you grab him. That's entrapment. Not if he's already committed to intimidating witnesses. You're just giving him an opportunity to do what he's already doing. Adrien, you're talking about using yourself as bait. Yeah. And your daughter? She stays with the protection detail. 24/7 coverage, safest location you can find. I don't care what it costs. Let me talk to the FBI. See if they'll go for it. They'll go for it because Porter's making them look bad every time he sends another threat, and because stopping him now prevents whatever he's planning for trial. Walsh promised to call back in the morning. Adrien hung up and sat in the dark kitchen, wondering if he'd just made the smartest decision of his life or the stupidest. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. I heard about the text message. Are you okay? Getting there. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me, day or night. I will. Thanks. And Adrien, whatever you're planning, be careful. Maya needs her father. I know. He went to bed but didn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him, thinking about choices and consequences and all the ways this could go wrong. Thursday morning arrived too soon. Adrien dropped Maya at school with the protection detail shadowing them, then drove to Apex feeling like he was walking toward a cliff edge. Helen found him in the lab at 8:30. I heard about the threat, she said without preamble. The job offer still stands, but I'll understand if you need time. I don't need time. I'll take it. She blinked. Just like that? Just like that. But I have conditions. Name them. I want full authority over safety protocols. If I say something's unsafe, it gets grounded until I say otherwise. No override, no exceptions. Agreed. I want an independent budget, not subject to quarterly reviews or executive approval. Done. And I want every installation from the past 5 years reviewed, not just the ones we know are bad. All of them. Helen smiled. You're going to be expensive. I'm going to be thorough. There's a difference. When can you start? After the trial. I need to see this through first. Fair enough. She extended her hand. Welcome aboard, Director Cole. They shook on it. As Helen left, David appeared in the doorway. Director Cole, he said with a grin. Fancy. Don't start. Too late. I'm already planning your office nameplate. His smile faded. Seriously, though, you okay? Word is Porter's escalating. I'm handling it. That's not what I asked. Adrien looked at his friend, because that's what David had become over these past intense days. Not just a colleague, but someone who actually gave a damn. I'm terrified, he admitted, but I'm also done being scared. So I'm doing something about it. What kind of something? The kind I can't talk about yet. David studied his face. Be careful, man. Whatever you're planning. That's what everyone keeps telling me. Because it's good advice. Walsh called at 10:15. FBI's on board, he said, but they have conditions. You wear a wire. You don't engage with Porter directly. Let him come to you. And the second they have what they need, you're out. No heroics, no improvising. Agreed. They want to brief you tomorrow, noon, Federal Building downtown. I'll be there? Adrien? Walsh paused. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The briefing Friday was thorough, professional, and terrifying. 2 FBI agents, Marsh and a new guy named Torres, walked Adrien through the plan. They'd plant information suggesting he was having second thoughts about testifying, that he was vulnerable to pressure, that he might be willing to make a deal. Porter will hear about it through his lawyer, Marsh explained. And if he takes the bait, he'll reach out. Try to negotiate, threaten, maybe offer money. Whatever he does, we'll have it on tape. And if he doesn't take the bait, Adrien asked, then we try something else. But our psych profile says he will. He's arrogant, controlling, believes he's smarter than everyone else. He won't be able to resist the opportunity to flip you. They fitted Adrien with a wire, a tiny device that looked like a button on his shirt. Showed him how to activate it, how to position himself so the audio would be clear. Remember, Torres said, you don't have to get a confession. Just get him to acknowledge that he's trying to influence your testimony. That's enough to revoke bail and add witness tampering charges. What if he gets physical? We'll be close. You'll never be more than 30 seconds from backup. Torres met his eyes. But if you feel unsafe at any point, you say the code word and we pull you out immediately. What's the code word? Maya. Adrien felt his stomach drop. You're using my daughter's name as the panic word? It's something you'll remember under stress. Something that won't sound out of place in normal conversation. Marsh's voice was gentle. If you need out, you just work her name into a sentence and we come running. They spent 2 more hours going over scenarios, rehearsing responses, preparing for every contingency they could think of. When they finally finished, Adrien felt wrung out and wired simultaneously. One more thing, Marsh said as he was leaving. We're moving your daughter to a secure location for the weekend. FBI safe house, full protection, completely off the books. She's going to hate that. She's going to be alive. That's what matters. Adrien called Maya's school, explained that there was a family emergency, and he'd be picking her up early. Then he drove there with his hands shaking on the wheel, trying to figure out how to explain this without terrifying her. She came out of the building looking worried. Is everything okay? The office said it was an emergency. Everything's fine, he lied. But we're going on a little adventure this weekend. What kind of adventure? The kind with new people and a different place to sleep and probably terrible TV. Maya looked at him suspiciously. That doesn't sound like an adventure. That sounds like hiding. Too smart. She was always too smart. It's just for a few days, he said, until some work stuff gets sorted out. The bad people stuff. Yeah. She was quiet for the rest of the drive. The FBI safe house was in a suburb 40 minutes outside Houston, a nondescript ranch house that could have belonged to anyone. 2 agents were already there, a woman named Chen and a man named Roberts. They seemed kind, competent, the type who'd actually protect a kid instead of just watching her. Adrien helped Maya settle into one of the bedrooms, unpacking the bag he'd hastily thrown together with her clothes and books and the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. How long do I have to stay here? She asked. Just the weekend, maybe Monday. Will you be here? Not the whole time. I have to work, but I'll visit every day. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't want to stay here without you. Adrien pulled her into a hug, feeling his own eyes burn. I know, baby. I don't want that either, but it's the safest place for you right now. And these people, he gestured at Chen and Roberts, they're going to take really good care of you. I'm scared. Me too. But being scared doesn't mean something bad is going to happen. It just means we're being careful. She held on to him for a long time. When she finally let go, her face was set in that determined expression she got when she decided to be brave. Okay, she said. I'll stay. But you have to promise you'll be safe too. I promise. Say it like you mean it. I promise I'll be safe. Cross my heart. She seemed satisfied with that. Adrien stayed for dinner, pizza that Chen ordered, eaten at a kitchen table, while Roberts told increasingly ridiculous jokes that actually made Maya laugh. At 8 o'clock, Adrien tucked her into the unfamiliar bed in the unfamiliar room. I love you, he told her. I love you too, Daddy. Come back soon. I will. He left feeling like he'd torn out part of his chest and left it behind. Saturday morning, the trap was set. David accidentally mentioned to several people at Apex that Adrien was having doubts about testifying. By noon, the rumor had spread through the building. By 3 p.m., it had reached the ears of 3 different reporters who called Adrien for comment. He didn't answer. At 6:47 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Adrien activated the wire with a subtle gesture and answered. Hello? Mr. Cole? Porter's voice was smooth, controlled. I think it's time we talked. I have nothing to say to you. I think you do. I think you're starting to realize that testifying against me is going to cost you more than you're willing to pay. Your job, your reputation, your daughter's well-being. Is that a threat? It's an observation. Trials are messy, Adrien. Things come out. Things about your past, your finances, your parenting. The media will eat it up, and poor little Maya will have to live with the fallout. Adrien forced himself to breathe steadily. What do you want? I want you to reconsider. Tell the prosecutors you made a mistake, that you misunderstood what happened 7 years ago, that Voss was just following company policy and you took it personally. You want me to lie. I want you to be smart, and in return, I'll make sure that custody evaluation you're worried about goes away, that the financial scrutiny stops, that you and your daughter can go back to your quiet little life. How do I know you can do that? Because I still have friends in useful places, friends who owe me favors. Porter's voice hardened. But this is a limited time offer. You have until Monday to decide. After that, I stop being generous. And if I say no, then you'll learn exactly how much damage I can do to someone who gets in my way. Ask Richard Voss how that worked out for him. Oh, wait, you can't. He's in federal custody because he wasn't smart enough to plan ahead. The line went dead. Adrien sat frozen, the wire still recording. After a moment, Marcia's voice came through his earpiece. We got it. Clean recording, clear threat, explicit witness tampering. That's enough. What happens now? Now we pick up Porter. FBI's en route to his house now. Should have him in custody within the hour. And then? And then you're done. The case proceeds, Porter goes to trial from jail, and you get to be a normal person again. Adrien didn't feel done. He felt hollowed out, exhausted, like he'd been running for 7 years and had only just now been allowed to stop. His phone rang again. Evelyn. I heard, she said. Are you okay? I don't know yet. Is Maya safe? Yeah, FBI safe house. Good. She paused. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. Stupid, maybe, but brave. Thanks, I think. When this is over, when the trial's done and Porter's behind bars, you should take a vacation. Somewhere warm. Just you and Maya. I don't know if I can afford. The company will pay for it. Consider it a bonus for saving us from bankruptcy. Her voice softened. You've spent 7 years fighting. You're allowed to rest. I don't know how to rest. Then learn. You've got a daughter who can teach you. At 8:23 p.m., Marsh called to confirm Porter was in custody. His bail had been revoked immediately based on the recording. He'd be held without bail until trial. How'd he take it? Adrien asked. Like a man who finally realized he'd miscalculated. Marsh sounded satisfied. His lawyers are already screaming entrapment, but it won't stick. He initiated contact, made the threats unprompted. This one's solid. What about Voss? Voss's lawyer approached us this afternoon about a plea deal. Full cooperation, testimony against Porter, in exchange for reduced charges. We're considering it. He threatened my daughter. I know. And if we take the deal, that'll be part of his allocution. He'll have to admit to everything publicly. Marsh paused. But ultimately, it's Walsh's call. He'll let you know. Adrien drove to the safe house to tell Maya the news. She was in her pajamas, watching a movie with Chen. Daddy! She launched herself at him. You came back! I told you I would. He hugged her tight. And I have good news. The bad people are in jail now. You get to come home. Really? Really? Tomorrow morning, if you want. I want. She looked at Chen. No offense, Chen smiled. None taken. I'll be glad to get my weekend back. They spent the night at the safe house anyway, easier than driving back in the dark, and Adrien was too exhausted to argue. He slept in the second bedroom with Maya curled up next to him, her stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. Sunday morning, they drove home through sunshine that felt earned. The protection detail was gone, no longer needed. The apartment looked exactly the same, but Adrien felt different walking into it. Lighter, maybe. Or just less afraid. Rebecca's article ran that afternoon. Front page, above the fold, with a headline that read, The Whistleblower Next Door, How one engineer's courage exposed aerospace corruption. It was fair, thorough, exactly what she'd promised. The comments section was vicious and supportive in equal measure, which Adrien forced himself to read once and then never again. Monday morning, he dropped Maya at school without a protection detail for the first time in 2 weeks. She skipped into the building like nothing had ever been wrong. Adrien watched her go, feeling something that might have been peace. At Apex, work continued. The 9 compromised engines had all been replaced at company expense. The FAA had completed its investigation and issued new safety guidelines that were largely based on Adrien's original report from 7 years ago. Apex's stock had stabilized, though it would take months to fully recover. Helen called him into her office at 10 a.m. "Your position starts officially in 2 weeks," she said. "I need you to put together a team, people you trust, people who won't stay quiet if they see a problem." "I have some ideas." "Good. Also, the board approved a whistleblower protection policy. Anyone who reports a safety issue gets immunity from retaliation, anonymous reporting channels, and legal support if needed. It's named the Cole Protocol." Adrien blinked. "You're naming it after me? You earned it, and it sends a message that we're serious about this, that we learned from our mistakes." The trial started 6 weeks later. Porter and Voss were tried together, facing charges of fraud, reckless endangerment, and witness tampering. Voss took a plea deal on the second day, agreeing to testify against Porter in exchange for a reduced sentence. Adrien testified on day 4. He walked into that courtroom with his recordings, his documentation, his 7 years of silence turned into words that finally mattered. Porter's lawyers tried to discredit him, paint him as vindictive and unstable. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury saw through it. The verdict came back after 3 days of deliberation, guilty on all counts. Porter got 18 years. Voss got 12 with possibility of parole after 8. Marcus got 5 years and permanent blacklisting from aerospace work. Adrien sat in the courtroom when the sentences were read and felt nothing dramatic, no surge of victory or release. Just a quiet settling, like a bone that had been broken was finally setting properly. Maya was waiting outside with Evelyn, who'd offered to watch her during the sentencing. When Adrien came out, Maya ran to him and he picked her up even though she was getting too big for it. "Is it over?" she asked. "Yeah, sweetheart, it's over." "Good. Can we go get ice cream now?" He laughed. "Yeah, we can get ice cream." Evelyn fell into step beside them as they walked to the parking lot. "How do you feel?" "Tired, relieved, still a little angry, if I'm honest. The anger's probably going to stick around for a while." "Probably." They reached his car. Evelyn hesitated, then said, "Maya, how would you feel about ice cream with me and your dad? My treat." Maya looked at Adrien for permission. He nodded. "Okay," Maya agreed, "but I get to pick the place." She picked a spot near the park, an old-fashioned ice cream parlor with sticky tables and flavors that had probably been there since the 1970s. They sat outside in the shade, eating ice cream that dripped faster than they could keep up with. "You know what's funny?" Evelyn said after a while. "What?" "A month ago you were a janitor. Now you're directing an entire safety division, testifying in federal trials, and getting ice cream with your former CEO. When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous." "It is ridiculous, but it's also true." She licked chocolate off her fingers. "You know what I learned from all this?" "What?" "That the right thing and the easy thing are almost never the same thing, and that most people will choose easy every single time. But the ones who choose right, even when it costs them everything, those are the ones who actually change things." Adrien thought about that. "I didn't change anything. I just told the truth." "You told the truth when everyone else was lying. That's how change starts." Maya, who'd been quietly demolishing her ice cream cone, looked up. "What did you change, Daddy?" "I made sure that bad parts don't go in airplanes anymore," he said simply. "That's good, because airplanes falling out of the sky would be bad. Very bad." "Then I'm glad you told the truth." She went back to her ice cream. The matter settled in the straightforward way that only 8-year-olds could manage. They finished their ice cream and went to the park. Maya ran to the swings while Adrien and Evelyn sat on a bench watching. "What's next for you?" Adrien asked. "Consulting, probably. Helping other companies fix their safety cultures before they implode like Apex almost did." Evelyn smiled. Turns out being the CEO who exposed her own company's corruption is a pretty good resume builder. I'm glad something good came out of this for you. Something good came out of it for everyone, except Porter and Voss, but they don't count. She watched Maya swing higher and higher, fearless. Your daughter's amazing. Yeah, she is. She gets that from you. I think she gets it from herself. Maybe, but she learned how to be brave from watching you. Adrien didn't know what to say to that, so he just sat in the sunshine and watched his daughter play and tried to absorb the fact that this was real, that they were safe, that the nightmare was actually over. 3 months later, Adrien's safety division had identified and corrected 47 potential issues across Apex's entire product line. The company had survived, barely, but it had survived honestly. Stock was climbing again, new contracts were coming in, the industry was watching. Maya had stopped asking about the bad people. She'd made new friends at school, joined the art club, started talking about maybe being an astronaut someday. Or a veterinarian. Or possibly both. Adrien worked late Tuesdays and Thursdays, and took every Wednesday off without exception. Sometimes they went to the zoo. Sometimes they just stayed home and colored pictures of purple Mars. It didn't matter what they did. What mattered was the time. On a Wednesday in late November, they were at the park when Adrien's phone rang. David. Turn on the news, David said. Channel 7. I'm with Maya. I know, but you need to see this. Adrien pulled out his phone and found the channel streaming. It was a story about aerospace safety reform, about new federal regulations being proposed in direct response to the Apex case. They interviewed members of Congress, FAA administrators, industry experts, and they interviewed Adrien. It was footage from the trial, him on the witness stand, explaining the connector harness failure. But they'd edited it down to a single quote. Sometimes telling the truth costs you everything, his past self said on the screen. But staying silent costs more. It costs lives. And that's not a price I was willing to pay. The segment ended with the anchor calling him a model for ethical engineering and an example of what courage looks like in corporate America. Adrien stared at his phone, not sure how to feel. Daddy? Maya appeared next to him. Was that you on TV? Yeah. You looked nervous. I was nervous. But you did it anyway? Yeah, sweetheart. I did it anyway. She nodded like this confirmed something she'd already known. That's what being brave is, right? Being scared, but doing it anyway? That's exactly what it is. Then I want to be brave like you when I grow up. Adrien pulled her into a hug. You already are, baby. You already are. That evening, after Maya was asleep, Adrien sat on the porch with a beer and his phone. He scrolled through emails, messages from colleagues and strangers, and people he'd never met telling him thank you, telling him he'd done the right thing, telling him their own stories of speaking up and being silenced. He answered a few, ignored most, tried not to let it all become overwhelming. His phone rang. Walsh, just calling to give you an update, Walsh said. Porter's appeal was denied. He's going to serve the full 18 years. Good. And Voss is being transferred to a minimum security facility. Model prisoner, apparently. Might get out in 6 years if he keeps it up. Adrien felt old anger stir. 6 years for what he did. It's not enough. I know. But it's what we got. Walsh paused. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like justice. It just feels like the best we could do. Yeah. For what it's worth, you did good, Adrien. You stood up when it mattered. That's more than most people can say. Thanks. After he hung up, Adrien sat in the darkness thinking about justice and truth and all the messy space between them. About how nothing ever resolved as cleanly as you wanted it to. How you didn't get neat endings. Just stopping points where you decided the fight was over. He thought about Maya, asleep in her room, dreaming about purple planets and astronaut cats. About how she'd never have to wonder if her father was someone who did the right thing or someone who just talked about it. That was worth 18 years for Porter and 12 for Voss and everything Adrien had lost and gained in between. The next morning, he went to work. His office was on the 3rd floor now, with windows that overlooked the hangar where everything had started. He could see the diagnostic station, the spot where the failed engine had sat, the place where he'd first spoken up after 7 years of silence. His team was already there when he arrived. David and 5 others, all engineers who understood that safety wasn't about checking boxes, it was about keeping people alive. Morning, Director, David said with his usual grin. Don't start? Can't help it. It's too much fun. They spent the morning reviewing a new propulsion system design, catching 3 potential issues before they became real problems. Adrien signed off on the corrections, knowing that somewhere, engineers he'd never meet would install these parts in planes that would carry people he'd never meet, and they'd all arrive safely because someone had bothered to get it right. That was the job. Not dramatic, not glamorous, just necessary. At lunch, Helen stopped by his office. Board meeting this morning, she said. They wanted me to tell you that you're being considered for the Vice President of Engineering position. Adrien nearly dropped his coffee. What? Richard Voss's old job, ironically enough. They think you'd be good at it. I've been director for 3 months, and in those 3 months, you've prevented more disasters than some people prevent in their entire careers. She leaned against his doorway. Look, I know it's a lot. I know you're still adjusting, but think about it. You could do a lot of good in that position. Can I keep my Wednesdays? The board specifically noted that the Wednesday arrangement is non-negotiable. Your contract, your rules. After she left, Adrien sat at his desk staring at nothing. Vice President of Engineering. 7 years ago, he'd been pushed out of this company in disgrace. Now they wanted him to run the whole division. Life was strange sometimes. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya's school. Maya asked us to remind you that Wednesday is Thanksgiving break and she wants to make cookies. He smiled and texted back. Tell her I remember. And yes, we can make cookies. Wednesday came with rain and the smell of cookies baking. Maya had insisted on making them from scratch, which meant flour on every surface and eggshells in the batter that Adrien had to carefully fish out. This is a disaster, Maya announced cheerfully, covered in chocolate chips and dough. This is an adventure, Adrien corrected. It's a disaster adventure. The cookies came out lopsided and slightly burnt on the bottom, but they tasted good enough. They ate them while watching a movie about talking animals. Maya curled up next to Adrien on the couch. Daddy? She said during a commercial break. Yeah? Are you happy? The question surprised him. Why do you ask? Because you smile more now. You used to not smile very much. Adrien thought about that. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm happy. Are you? Yeah, I like it when you're home. I like it when we make cookies and watch movies, and you don't look sad anymore. I like it too. She settled back against him, apparently satisfied. The movie resumed, the rain kept falling, and Adrien sat in his living room thinking about how far they'd come. 7 years of silence, 3 months of chaos, and now this. A quiet Wednesday afternoon with his daughter, eating burnt cookies and watching cartoons. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was honest, and it was safe, and it was theirs. That was enough. The following Monday, Adrien accepted the vice president position. He built a team of engineers who understood that speaking up wasn't optional. It was the job. He implemented systems where safety concerns couldn't be buried, where anonymous reporting was protected, where doing the right thing didn't cost you your career. The Cole Protocol became industry standard. Other aerospace companies adopted similar policies. The FAA made it federal regulation. And somewhere in all of that, Adrien Cole went from being the janitor who wouldn't stay quiet to being the man who'd changed an entire industry. But that's not how he thought of himself. He was just a father who'd made a choice, who decided that his daughter deserved to grow up in a world where truth mattered more than convenience, where safety mattered more than profit, where people actually fixed their mistakes instead of hiding them. Was he a hero? He didn't think so. Heroes were people who did extraordinary things. He'd just done what anyone should do, told the truth, and refused to look away. But Maya thought he was a hero. And in the end, that was the only opinion that mattered. On Wednesdays, they still got ice cream. Sometimes Evelyn joined them, sometimes David, sometimes it was just the two of them. They'd sit outside whatever shop Maya had picked that week, eating ice cream that melted too fast and talking about everything and nothing. And Adrien would look at his daughter, 9 years old now, gap-toothed and brilliant and braver than she knew, and he'd think about all the choices that had led them here, the good ones and the bad ones, the desperate ones and the courageous ones, all of them tangled together into something that looked, from a distance, like a life worth living. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. And in the end, That was all anyone could ask for.